Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about to start the meeting. Okay, thank you. Okay, so welcome to the Planning Committee, being held at 7 p.m. on the 27th of July 2017. First off, I'd like to remind residents that this meeting is being audio recorded, and a copy of that audio recording will be available on the Council's website in around about 5 working days of this meeting. So with that, we will now open up the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence? Thank you.
Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Churchman, who's being substituted by Councillor Brian Little. We've also had apologies from Councillor Roy Jones and Steve Taylor, the Campaign to Protect Rural Essex representative.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, next item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting found on pages 5 to 16. Are there any comments? And if not, are we happy to approve those? Is that in agreement? Agreed, excellent. Item 3, items of urgent business. There are none, so we can move straight on to item 4, declarations of interest. Would anyone like to make any declarations? Thank you. Councillor Little.
I'm a neighbour of the applicant for 17-00470 FUL. I won't be taking part in the debate because I wasn't here anyway, and I'll either absent myself or just sit at the back.
Wonderful, thank you. Excellent. Any other comments? Any other declarations? No? Okay. And then item 5, declarations of receipt of any correspondence. Councillor Piccolo?
I've received correspondence on application number 17-00548.
Councillor Osjola, Little, then Rice.
Thank you, Chair. I received correspondence on the same application 17-00548. Thank you.
Ditto for me.
Yeah. Councillor Rice?
Yes, that same application and item 8, 17/00470 FUL. That's a local resident in my ward. So I have received communication.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Snell?
Yeah, also on 17/00548, received correspondence.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Lydiard?
Correspondence on the same one.
Excellent. Councillor Hamilton?
Ditto.
Excellent, and that's the whole committee, including myself. I can also confirm I've received correspondence on 17/00548. Thank you. Right, we'll now go on to item 6, planning appeals. There's been a few planning appeals. Do we have any comments? Lee, is there anything you'd like to take up on there?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. No reports for noting, but happy to field any questions.
Okay, there are no further questions there. With that, we'll open up item 7, so that's a public address to the committee, and with that we can open up the remaining items on the agenda. First is item 8, 17/00470/FUL, 3 Longley Mews, and they can be found on pages 25 to 36. Nadia, if you'd be so kind as to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This application was deferred at the previous planning committee to allow members to carry out a site visit. Forgive me if I'm turning around. Members visited the site on the 3rd of July. The photographs of the site show the property as it is at present and how members viewed it. So you can see the property in the background there, with the garage on the far left. There's another close-up of the property with the original garage that was converted. Garage there, and another picture of the property subject to the application. At the previous committee, members questioned whether the Planning Inspectorate previously took into account the personal circumstances which were presented to them by the applicant's planning agent during his address to committee. Members were advised that the issue of the health of the applicant had previously been considered by the Inspectorate, but it was not found to constitute very special circumstances. The previous application and the previous appeal was consequently dismissed. The refusal of the previous application is a material consideration which must be taken into account in the assessment of this application. Whilst it's acknowledged that the applicant's parents' health has deteriorated since December 2016, in particular her mother, officers are mindful of the Inspectorate's comments in relation of the ability of the existing dwelling to accommodate the needs of the applicant's parents. Officers have therefore concluded that there is no material change in circumstances between this and the earlier application which might lead to a different recommendation being made. The report and recommendation from the previous committee are appended to this report for members' information, and the recommendation remains unchanged, and the application is therefore recommended for refusal. I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent, thank you very much, Nadia. With that, do we have any further questions? Councillor Rice?
So we've given no weight at all to the personal circumstances, even though at the last meeting we did actually ask the applicant to put some medical evidence into the planning committee.
No further evidence has been submitted than was submitted at the time to members at the committee, and no weight was given to it by the planning inspectorate.
Okay, Councillor Jonah.
Sorry, Chair, just wanted to clarify, is it that we didn't seek for it, or it wasn't brought forward, or either?
No further evidence was forthcoming beyond which that members heard at the previous planning committee. So the agent brought forward information explaining that the parents' health had deteriorated, but there was no further change or material changes in that health that would outweigh the previous recommendation and the appeal decision prior to that.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions there? No? Okay. With that, we can open up the debate. Would anyone like to debate the item? No? Okay. All right. Well, we did have a discussion on this one last month. I think that the site visit was quite important to sort of just clear our minds on this. I think the report itself is quite conclusive, as there is no further evidence brought forward. And I think it's always quite dangerous on these types of applications that if we do approve this particular one, are we setting a precedent for other extensions? So with that, that would be my comments on the application. Councillor Rice, did you want to pick up anything there? Thank you.
All I was going to say, Chair, I hear what you say, but we have been reminded by Andy Millard every meeting that we treat every application on its merits. So there's no floodgates opening. We are treating this. I would still appeal to the committee, because of the ill health that, was put forward at the last meeting, that perhaps we might change our mind. But it's obviously it's up to the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Rice, and I do agree with you there. What we do look at these applications on their own merits. I think sometimes the planning inspectorate, I'm not so sure. If we set one example, it can always be quite dangerous. But I do accept what you're saying. We do look at them separately. Would anyone else like to comment on that? No. Okay. So at the moment there is a recommendation on page 34. Did you want to come in there, Andy? Sorry.
Only very briefly, Chair, just to say that Councillor Rice is in part right, but each application does stand to be determined on its own merits. But having regard to the development plan and other material planning considerations, as Nadia has said, in terms of the development plan, it's contrary to it, and in terms of other material considerations, this is not materially different from an application that was refused by the council, and also that decision supported on appeal. So that's the nub of this, and that's why the recommendation is what it is.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Thanks for those additional comments. Anyone want to pick up on that, or we'll go straight to the votes? No? No? Okay. So there is a recommendation set out on page 34. That's recommendation 8.1, and that's to refuse. Would anyone like to recommend refusal? I'll recommend refusal. Is that seconded? Councillor Piccolo? Okay. So with that, we'll go to the votes. All those in favour of refusal, please raise your hands. Okay, all those against? Okay. You right there, yeah? Excellent, perfect. Okay, so with that, we can say that the application 17/00470/FUL has been refused. Thank you for all those who participated. So with that, we can now move on to item agenda 9. This is 16/01625/OUT, and that's land adjacent to Moore Avenue, Devonshire Road and London Road. Presenting this particular report will be Jonathan. Jonathan, if you'd like to present your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks outline planning consent for the redevelopment of the site for up to 75 dwellings with associated parking, landscaping and open space. The application has been submitted with all matters reserved except for access, which is for consideration. So that's the current site there. Devonshire Road runs north to south. We've got London Road running east to west. Askews Farm Lane Industrial Estate along there, and Moore Avenue running north to south. So that's the southwestern corner of the site, London Road running east to west. That's the centre of the southern part of the site looking north. You've got the junction with Devonshire Road running north up there, and London Road running along the bottom of the picture. That's Moore Avenue to the west of the site. That's looking east from the pedestrian access to the site along London Road, and that's looking west from the pedestrian access. That's looking north along Devonshire Road. You've got Highways Verge in between up to the fence, and then the site to the left. That's looking south along Devonshire Road, again the Highways Verge, the site behind the fence. That's looking southeast across the site from an access road behind Moore Avenue. That's looking west across the site, and you can see the properties in Moore Avenue in the background. That's looking west from an existing access to the site, and you can see the properties in Moore Avenue towards the rear of the picture. And that's looking southeast across the site from a rear access way along the back of Moore Avenue. That's looking north again across the site from the rear of Moore Avenue, and that's looking at the rear access and properties on Moore Avenue. So the application site is the southern part of the site. The whole area shown on the screen is owned by the applicant, but at this point the application solely relates to the southern part of the site. As we can see, the only access for vehicles comes from Devonshire Road, and at the southwestern corner of the site will be a pedestrian and vehicle access. Shows it better on this plan. So that's a pedestrian and cycle access, onto London Road, and the main access onto Devonshire Road there. In terms of layout, the layout is all indicative, but the applicant would be looking at creating larger, higher buildings on the corner to anchor the development within the street scene. So on the corner of London Road and Devonshire Road, and the northeastern corner next to the access to the site. Again, it's indicative, but there's a palette of materials that could be used on buildings on the site in the future. This is basically a layout showing the types of properties. So there's a mix of apartment blocks, which would predominantly be on the corner, terrace houses along the middle, and semi-detached and detached houses along the western boundary. And this shows landscaping on the site. The northern part of the site would be kept open and managed. There would be areas of public open space on the northeastern corner. The areas in green there, and there would be the gardens for the properties, and there's a landscaping strip there of existing trees which would be retained. Again, this is another view of sort of structural landscaping, so trees along the western boundary, and there would be tree planting and landscaping retained on the southeastern boundary. So the site lies within the Grays urban area, which is one of the main regeneration hubs in the borough. The site was shown in the 2013 Site-Specific Allocations (DPD) as a reasonable alternative for residential development. Development would propose up to 75 units in the existing urban area, which complies with council aims in policy CSSP1 to direct housing to existing urban areas. The development is therefore considered to be acceptable in principle. The only matter of detail which can be formally considered at this time is the access. The vehicle access as shown would take place from Devonshire Road, and pedestrian and cycle access would be available onto Devonshire Road or via the dedicated access onto London Road close to 312 at the south. The applicant has engaged with the Highways Officer prior to the submission to discuss the access strategy. The proposed accesses are acceptable and satisfy the requirements of the Highways team. As shown on the slides, illustrative plans have been submitted showing the layout, scale and appearance of the scheme. These are considered to be appropriate in relation to the site itself, nearby developments and the wider area. On the basis of the responses from statutory consultees, it is considered a suitable scheme could be achieved for the number of units proposed. Matters of detail relating to ecology, drainage, highways detail, ecology and landscaping could be covered by condition. The applicant has also been working with the education team and housing officer during the process of the application. A contribution of just under £176,000 has been agreed with the education officer. The applicant has also agreed to a policy-compliant 35% affordable housing comprising 26 dwellings with a 50-50 split between affordable rented and shared ownership intermediate tenures. Accordingly, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions and the completion of a 106 agreement.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that report there. So with that, councillors, questions. First of all, Councillor Hamilton, then Councillor Stroller.
Thank you. Can you just confirm I heard correctly that there was just one vehicle access on Devonshire Road, the other access was pedestrians and cyclists?
Yep, that's correct. The vehicle access would be up here on Devonshire Road and the pedestrian and cycle access would be there. There's an existing access to the site which would be retained and improved, yes.
Although, if I may continue, I would say that is drastically inadequate because just one access up Devonshire Road, it's not necessarily a wide road as it is. And also reading the notes, as can be appreciated, London Road at the best of times is not the clearest of roads, and it is in fact very busy even at this moment because of the various works taking place. And I would think just one access is, for the vehicles, completely, as far as I'm concerned, inadequate. Not only access there, but of course it's going to go down Devonshire Road, which of course is going to cause problems elsewhere.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Matthew, did you want to come in there? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, Devonshire Road is the average width of about 7.3 metres wide. It's designed as a relief road for HGVs to get in and out of South Stifford area, with London Road to the west of the junction having a 7.5 tonne weight limit, and to the east a width restriction with also a 7.5 tonne weight limit on it as well. So in terms of the suitability of Devonshire Road, it is a very high category road with suitable junction geometries to allow an access to be made onto that road. Initially we looked at a junction access onto London Road. In terms of the close proximity to the Devonshire Road signals, it's undesirable because of the queue length of traffic on London Road would cause significant issues at that junction. On balance, a one-access strategy is acceptable for the number of dwellings. There's 75 dwellings proposed for this site. A two-access strategy would only really come into play when you're around 200 dwellings. So in terms of highway design standards, it's deemed to be acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Scholar.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jonathan, for your report, and Matthew for the update there. You said we're limited mainly to access is what we can talk about tonight. So I'll restrict my questions to access, but one of the observations is, in principle, the scheme seems to be very okay, and I'm pleased about the 106, what do you call it, the social housing coming in, and the contribution to education. In terms of access, almost like where Councillor Hamilton stopped off, the speed that road, I believe at that junction is 40 miles per hour. Now, with the junction coming off that, are we going to regulate the speed further down so that that then reduces to 30, just to make it safer?
Thank you, Chair. The councillor is quite correct that on Devonshire Road it is a 40 mile an hour speed limit. London Road is a 30 mile an hour speed limit. It's conceivable as part of the off-site highway works that will be required to facilitate a new junction. It may be deemed appropriate to reduce the speed limit in advance of the new junction down to the Devonshire Road signals. but that would be borne out through further design work as part of the Section 278 works for the access.
Okay, thanks for that, and I hope we can make sure we map that, plan that along. The second question, again about access, is now again maybe it's because I can't see the approximate distance to the London Road. Because to me, is the access, is it the bit down at the bottom here, or is it further up? Sorry. Oh, is it the one up in the middle?
Yes, that's the best one. That's the clearest one. The access is there about halfway along the applicant's site, and that's the junction. That's the traffic light junction with London Road.
All right. Okay. Sorry. There's a deep or something a bit further down, and if you use a mouse or your pointer, what is that?
That's the existing access, which won't be used as part of the application. That's an existing access to the club, but that's not part of the application. The access, that is the access that would be used. Okay,
that's fine. And in proximity to, because towards the tail end of the road, where it links with junction with London Road, the Devonshire Road tends to almost be 2 lanes. So it's 1 lane coming down from Chafford, and then towards there it comes to 2 lane. Where exactly is this? Is it before it comes to the 2 lane?
Yes, the single lane stretch. Okay. Single lane each way, yeah.
All right, thank you. And I know I can't ask a question about the other bits, but the garden, from the map you placed before us anyway, the garden just seems to be, there seems to be a provision of green space, but it seems to be just be a provision. It seems to be very economical in terms of size, especially where I think the four bedrooms are.
It's as you said, it is an indicative plan, so we can't fully consider all the details. But in terms of the size of the garden, some of the properties on Moore Avenue are sort of established properties with longer gardens, but we are satisfied that they could accommodate the units with gardens that would be an acceptable size for the units proposed. So it's not something we can fully consider, but we are happy that they could fit the number of units on there.
Councillor Piccolo.
Thank you, Chair. Jonathan, I wonder if it's not necessary to do with access now, although it could be. The land, I'm used to it, northwest, south and east, the open land that is remaining there, is that forming part of the application? In other words, that will remain open land, or could at some later stage that be developed?
Let's find a better. Right, sorry, the map's the wrong way around, but the whole of the site, so the green area to the north and the application site are under the same ownership. Because of the New Star Terminal site up there, they can't currently develop any further north of the existing site because of its proximity to the tanks. So at this point, this area is effectively sterilised for development because of the tank farm. So in the future, it may be something that comes forward, but at this point, the only developable area is the bit that's shown on the plans.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No. Okay, John, I did have one question. You mentioned there was already some trees planted. Have you got photos of that back wall at the moment? I'm not sure if you have. It's because it's quite far back.
Those are some of the existing trees that would remain as part of the application.
And then there was a line of trees in the pre-app going all the way down to London Road. Right. Are they to be planted?
Oh, on the plans.
Yeah, sorry.
They would look at doing some. There would be some landscape works proposed along there, but that's the main bank of trees that are there already. But
and that main bank of trees, that line from there down to London Road, that'd have to be planted for screening, I imagine.
We would look at as part of the landscaping scheme. We would look at beefing up screening along the boundaries with the established properties. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. Going back a few minutes, you mentioned about the area that could not be built on because it was encroaching or getting near the tanks. Would that be considered suitable for parkland? And if it were, would it be a private parkland or open to all?
In terms of the application, it's shown to be gated and there's no public access at this time to the area. The red area is going to be left for habitat enhancement, and the other area would potentially be maintained, but it's not something that could be used as open space at this point because we've got the proximity to the tank farm.
You say it couldn't be used as parkland then? It couldn't be used as open space?
Not for public open space at this time, no.
So were it to be a parkland, then it would be private parkland then? Is that what you're saying?
It's not proposed to have formal access to that site for members of the public, so it's going to be maintained as open land, but with no formal access at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Just in terms of education, thank you for the details about the provision of education. Which is the catchment school? Just thinking, it's quite in between, almost like triangulated in the midst of a few schools.
Education have got 5 schools in the central planning area. They've got Hathaway, William Edwards, Gateway Academy, Grays Convent and Harris Academy, Trafford 100. So those are the sites that the pupils may go to.
William Edward. That's a bit of a distance.
That's the advice that the education officers given. Those are the schools within the area that... Sorry. Yep, the education officer listed those schools as the ones would be affected by the scheme.
Okay, and primary school wise?
It was only those schools. The contribution would be towards those schools that wouldn't be for primary education.
I thought there was the Belmont Castle on one side. There's the there's one down London Road in West Thurrock, Woodside or something. And there's one up. Then there's, of course, there's the Harris Mayflower, which is a 5-form entry. That's what I was.
Oh, right, yeah. No, the advice from Sarah Williams was that those 5 schools are the ones that would require contribution from this development. I take your point about the proximity of other schools, but unfortunately Sarah couldn't be here this evening. But those are the schools she's required it for.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's no further questions. We now have 3 speakers on this particular item. First off, I'd like to invite the resident, Michelle Peters, to come up and make your statement. You have 3 minutes in which to speak. I have had an opportunity to read your speech already. Obviously, there's quite a lot of information here. You have 3 minutes, so if you could just sum up as best you can. Thank you.
Hello. It's just everybody's comment, so I'll abbreviate from it. 36 Moore Avenue, they look onto the back of the land. They are worried about the disturbances with the snakes that are in the fields. If the planning permission goes ahead, noise disturbances and the increased risk to their garden break-ins because there'll be pedestrian rights to the rear of the houses. The lady in particular has lived there. She's 23 and she wants to know she won't obviously be able to afford the houses that are being built after all the disturbances. Number 18, they did apply, they did send their thing in, but it didn't come up online. She's protesting against increased traffic, the security at the rear of the gardens and access to her rear garden. 16 Moore Avenue, I've lived there for 24 years. The road's already busy and it takes Moore Avenue even longer time to come in to access your homes. London Road is very busy because of the commuters, and once the bridge and the buildings behind the houses near Devonshire Road is going to cause more havoc. 15 Moore Avenue, this is a long one so I'll really abbreviate. He's been there for 60 years. He says that we're already suffering the worst traffic pollution in the country, and adding more homes and cars to this area is going to make it worse. Any issues within the M25 Lakeside or the A13, the traffic goes through London Road, and with more people being enticed to the area with the Nickelodeon Kids Theme Park and the bowling alley at Lakeside, traffic will become worse. It's already known that a journey from Ballantynes to Moore Avenue is going to take over an hour if there's bad traffic. We need less development in the area. People in West Thurrock have put up with enough traffic and pollution from the days of the cement works to heavy traffic. We need now more open spaces. So turn the hillside field over to the local park, which would be the best solution. I myself, I've only been there 3 years. We didn't know of any plans for development when we bought. The traffic, the parking is shocking. People park from London Road in our road. Every morning there's sort of half a dozen finding a space. We've got number 8, she's been there 35 years. She's seen a huge increase in housing development in the local area. None of the developments fully cater for the additional influx of parking and traffic congestion they create. There's already a huge problem in the local area with heavy congestion, and now there's a housing estate currently on the old National Grid site along London Road. How much more traffic can we possibly have? Specifically, families with more than one vehicle and people who live close along London Road now park up our street, which often means days she cannot park outside her house. She's 75 years old and needs to park close by. She said there used to be a huge rat problem over the rear. The last time it was dug up and laid, the houses at the bottom of Moore Avenue were infested. Is the building company going to monitor and pay for any costs involved with the local residents to resolve any problems with disturbances? What about the
Okay,
wildlife
thank you.
health?
Do you want to, could you sum up there for us? Just a few more comments. Thank you.
So basically, everyone that's submitted an application has said that they are opposed against it. So.
Thank you very much. It's a very good presentation. Thank you. So with that, I'd also like to invite Ward Councillor Oliver Gerrish to speak on this item, and you'll be speaking in objection. And you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm objecting to the application on the following grounds. The loss of amenity to residents due to additional housing resulting in a loss of privacy for residents, the additional traffic that will be generated, in particular for London Road, the additional noise from a new housing site with an impact on existing residents, and concerns over traffic safety for vehicles exiting the site directly onto Devonshire Road. Chair, residents, particularly those of Moore Avenue, have asked me to attend tonight and raise a number of concerns, and I'm very happy to do so as their ward representative. Residents currently enjoy a good degree of privacy and are not overlooked to the rear of their properties. The concern with this application is the risk that that will change. They'll lose privacy and be overlooked by properties developed immediately to the rear of their gardens. I think that sometimes we underestimate the impact that that can have on people, and frankly it's not nice to lose some of the peace and quiet that you can enjoy in your own garden. This scheme would therefore appear to constitute a loss of amenity due to loss of privacy. There's also a concern about the additional noise that would be generated from the new site, and it's not just the fact that privacy is impacted. Putting in that many additional properties will inevitably result in an increase in noise, including extra noise from vehicles. I think that's a given, but bear in mind that all these properties will be just metres from the back gardens of residents in Moore Avenue, noisy and also very close by. Residents in the area have also had to deal with a huge amount of traffic noise from London Road, and to add more noise on top of that would clearly be a major imposition on them. The related issue here is the impact in terms of additional traffic. London Road is already one of the busiest roads in Thurrock, and to add yet more car journeys along London Road, which I think you have to think from this application is probably likely, would be even more strain on a very congested area. It's already sometimes a real challenge, especially if you're trying to emerge from Moore Avenue onto London Road, and for every little bit more difficult that gets for residents, the more frustrating it becomes. That's before you get to a traffic standstill due to the bridge closing or yet more roadworks or utilities works on London Road. That's also not to mention, obviously, the additional construction traffic that would take place during construction in an area that's already inundated with HGVs, and that's a question of more air pollution as well as just congestion and noise. And that then brings me to the last point, which is that the junction proposed on Devonshire Road would seem to raise some concerns for safety. That's a stretch of road where vehicles tend to be travelling very fast, and I'm not convinced that the visibility for emerging onto Devonshire Road would be very good. So you'll have cars pulling out onto a road where they don't have a great view as the road curves around at that point on Devonshire Road, and where they could be very rapidly approaching traffic coming up to meet those cars emerging from the site. There also don't seem to be very many good alternatives for access. I would agree that an access point onto London Road is absolutely impossible and can't be allowed because of the weight of traffic there. All of those issues, I think, Chairman, raise very clear issues and need very careful considerations then of the merit of this scheme. I think that residents' concerns should be listened to, and committees should in particular be very tough in calculating whether any proposed mitigation is good enough. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Gerish. And with that, I'd also like to invite the last speaker on this item, and that's the agent, James Lawson. I understand you'll be coming down to speak in support of the application. And as before, you have 3 minutes to present your application. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak as agent on this item. The applicant is pleased to have reached this stage following around 2 years of surveys and technical work, along with related pre-application discussions with your officers and consultees and public consultation, leading to the submission of the planning application in November last year. The site is vacant, currently serves no useful purpose, but does lie in an accessible location, close to schools, shops, services and community facilities, some employment and public transport, and in our view is suitable for redevelopment. The residential proposals would bring the land back into beneficial use and meet the clear need for new housing delivery within Thurrock, which is currently under-provided for. They make effective use of the site, are well designed and conserve its character, and would enhance the local area. A good mix of house types and tenures are envisaged, including 26 affordable homes, meeting your full 35% policy requirement, which would be available to both buy and rent, making a significant contribution to meeting local housing needs in the Grays area. The proposals are sensitively designed and retain the existing trees and hedgerows on site as far as practicable, provide for new planting, public open space and an equipped play area, along with footpath, cycle track provision, SUDS drainage and education contributions. The site has previously been identified for housing in your draft site-specific plan, and the proposals are consistent with local and national policies which seek to boost the supply of homes, meeting local needs within sustainable locations. The site is master planned to deliver a high quality, safe and inclusive new housing community, responsive to its local character and context, and would enhance the street scene and townscape value of the area. The proposal is supported by statutory consultees, and the overall approach responds to the points raised by the ward councillor and local residents, whose transport and amenity-based considerations are taken into account in the proposed illustrative scheme layout and in the mitigation strategies and infrastructure provision. In regards to the point about relationship to Moore Avenue residents, the illustrative scheme provides around about 45 to 50 metres separation from the nearest properties on the western side of the site to Moore Avenue, so very generous. The officer's report recommends approval to the application, and subject to the imposition of conditions in a Section 106 agreement, which would ensure that an attractive and sustainable new housing development is delivered. The proposals are therefore commended to members, and it's respectfully requested that permission be granted. Thank you, Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you very much. You may return to your seat. Thank you. Okay, based on those presentations, are there any further questions Councillor Hamilton first, thank you.
I do apologise for prolonging the meeting, but it has mentioned on one of the notes, page 5, that there was a consideration regarding badgers. And perhaps I should have asked the lady when she was here, but has there been any substantiation of them being there? Any proof?
There were ecology surveys carried out, including a badger report. Badger activity has been found in the northern part of the site, but there are conditions to update all the ecology reports as part of any approval, and create a mitigation strategy, so there will be no harm to the badgers in the long term as part of the scheme. So it would be covered in any approval.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ostertaylor.
Thank you, Chair. Just relating to the question about, or the points raised about access to gardens, I think of residents on Moore Avenue. Could you please point out from your map where that access is? And
so the new improved pedestrian access will be along the southwestern corner along there. A number of the properties further north along Moore Avenue do have access along the rear, but the application site would be planted with trees and other boundary treatments, so there wouldn't be any impact on the properties to the rear of Moore Avenue. It would be kept as a separate site from Moore Avenue to stop people going between the two sites.
And in terms of overlooking, I know you said trees at the tail end, but are there, what about further up? What are we doing further up? I can see where the proposed trees are going to be planted. But, would that be enough to give the privacy of the gardens up there, down there, and then further up into the site? What was being done about that and the privacy there?
Well, the closest properties along here have a distance of 11 metres onto the rear boundary with the properties on Moore Avenue, and as the agent said, further north the distance is in the range of 45 to 50 metres, which is well over the 20 metres back-to-back distance we'd usually say, so it's acceptable in neighbour amenity terms even with this indicative layout.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I did have a couple of questions. The first was in relation to the traffic along London Road. I do agree that is a huge concern, and then air pollution. Are we looking at clear, concise material considerations? If we was to look to reject the application, is that something that could be set? I'm not sure, Matthew, if you wanted to come in terms of additional traffic and pollution, or do you feel that's acceptable? Obviously, on the report it looks acceptable.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just read through the summary of the Highways report. For benefit of members, there is air quality management areas along the London Road corridor, which is a significant issue in this area. But I'll just read the comments that are on here. So, the Devonshire Road, London Road signal junction is nearing capacity at peak times and is one of the main congestion points in South Stifford. A transport assessment has been submitted in support of the application, but the findings were initially raised concern at. A revised TA was submitted that gives a positive view towards the potential traffic impact and identifies that improvements to capacity, particularly with future traffic generations, could be made if signal timings were adjusted. Although the majority of findings in the revised transport assessment are agreed, there are still concerns with regards to severance issues for pedestrians and cyclists, as highlighted earlier in the pre-application stage. Some form of improvement in this area to maximise sustainability of the site may be necessary, which is the reason why they've put the cycle access onto London Road to get better access to bus facilities that were to the west. The development proposal meets this requirement and should contribute towards capacity improvements measured at the junction of London Road and Devonshire Road to mitigate the impact on the network. Therefore, subject to conditions and Section 106 obligations, there would be no severe reason to object to this application. So that gives the highways officers rundown of the transport assessment, which assessed the impact of the junction in its current form and included the impact of the development traffic at that junction. With regards to the Section 106 contribution that was requested. I don't know whether or not that's included within the Section 106, whether or not it was considered to be a severe enough reason to add it as an obligation onto the 106. To be honest, the signal timings is more of a programme package, so it's not a huge sum of money to change the signal timings. So it might be that it's something that could be dealt with by the local authority as and when the situation arises in the future, which may be 5 years down the line. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Piccolo, then Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of concern, it seems to be, about access on a Devonshire Road from the site. Bearing in mind its close proximity to the town centre, I don't know precisely, but it's possibly less than the 500 metres that would normally mean that the parking standard could be lower. My point, though, is that trying to get people to make the modal shift into walking, would it be possible to have the access from or the egress from the site a left turn only, so that it actually sends the vehicles to the major road network rather than allowing them to further congest London Road? Technically, London Road to get to the shops is, I would have said, in previous applications that would have been deemed close enough to walk. So I'm wondering what the possibility is to make it left turn only out of the site on the Devonshire Road.
Thank you, Chair. There are inherent difficulties with banning a movement onto the network. So, for example, in that instance, we ban right turn. In order to do that, you're going to have to make it left in, left out, which will put pressure on London Road, because although everybody coming out of the site will turn left and go north on Devonshire Road, anybody going into the site would need to access from London Road end. So, in terms of practicality, it's probably not feasible in this location because we put in more pressure onto London Road. In instances such as this, it's about driver behaviour. If the driver makes the choice to go north to get to the strategic road network because there is inherent problems on London Road, it's a decision that they would make themselves. By forcing them to do that, you're likely to get them travelling along the London Road corridor from Lakeside Basin. So if they're coming from the M25 or the A13 and they want to go into that site, they'll either have to go down Hog Lane and go through London Road, or go through Lakeside Basin and then onto London Road to get access by the left in. Alternatively, they could chance it and try and do a U-turn, because in order to do a left in, left out, we're going to have to put a physical measure in. That might be more problematic in close proximity to that junction. Case example would be the A1306 with Purfleet Road. We put a left in, left out there. There's a lot of problems with U-turn vehicles who need to go in one direction because the route to get out is more convoluted as a result. And we're actually, at the moment, getting rid of that facility because of the problems that are being faced by it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rice, and then Councillor Little.
Yeah, I mean, mine is similar. I live in Heath Road, and I have to come out, turn right onto a 40 mile an hour speed limit called the 1306. Now, I take my life in my hands trying to get out of that road with vehicles doing 40 miles an hour. And we've got a junction on both sides. We've got a junction going into Baker Street and junction into Heath Road. Now we're only talking about one exit turning right and one exit turning left. My concern is, whilst this site is obviously within the local development framework, it's been identified, so we haven't got a lot of argument there, at the very least, that 40 mile an hour limit should be reduced to 30 because it is dangerous going out straight out onto a 40 mile an hour zone, and we're likely to cause accidents. There is no ifs or buts about that, and I think that's where we should be driving. We should have a condition in here saying that access onto Devonshire Road has to be put down to a 30-mile-an-hour limit. It would be negligent of us if we didn't do that.
Okay, thank you to Councillor Rice. Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just confirm, I don't get this left in, left out bit. I get left out, but I don't quite understand why you have to have left in as a consequence of having left out. If you see what I mean.
Thank you, Chair. The issue of banning right turn movements out of a junction, it's a traffic regulation order without physical measures is difficult to enforce. The proximity of a T-junction is that you have to pull the island that forms that physical measure, you have to pull it past the junction, which prohibits you right turning in. So it's more of a design element. If you have the island too short, people can just U-turn around it and go into the site. And similarly, coming out, they can just U-turn around it and come back out again. Can I just go back to Councillor Rice's comments with regards to reducing the speed limit? There is a condition on the development which is for condition 19, and it says site splays and speed reduction measures. And it says prior to commencement of development, details of site splays and speed reduction measures shall be provided at all proposed junctions and bends for approval in writing to local planning authority. So it's actually conditioned as part of this development that it can be developed as part of the Section 278 agreement for the off-site highway works.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions there? No. Councillor Hamilton?
If I'm looking at it correctly, a little bit nearer grade on the London Road, this is where the buses and the cars are alternating. And I think that, if I'm correct in that, no matter how much timing you do, I think it's just going to increase congestion on that particular aspect and cause a bottleneck. And again, it's just the fact that you're going to get a great deal of congestion on that London Road. And my particular objection overall, although generally it's been approved, I think the parking aspect as well has been mentioned previously. It's just going to be horrendous. And those are particular concerns of mine.
Okay, thank you. Well, what we'll do is we'll pick those up when we go to debate, very shortly, I think. Are there any further questions? Councillor Stoller?
Just very quickly. Just very quickly, Chair, a clarification about the play area that you're providing again. I know you showed it earlier, I just wasn't very clear to me.
Yep, currently the open areas are sort of to the northeast of the site. There's strips of open area along the south, but they're not sort of usable shapes, so details would need to be submitted as part of the application. But again, the master plan, it's a master plan, but it may not be the final layout, so the applicant is prepared to put play equipment in, but it might not be the same layout that you see before you today.
Okay, so that they're prepared to put it, or they will put it?
There is a condition that says they would submit details of play equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I did have one question on the amenity space. Probably more suited for you, Andy. So if we look to the left, we've got that nice green area. Obviously, we can't do anything on that at the moment in terms of more residential development or an open space. So looking at the site-specific allocations, the applicant is coming to us with 75 dwellings, yet we gave approval for a potential 120. I assume that wasn't taking into account the area that is close to the tankers. And is there anything we can do in this application to protect that parcel? So if the tankers are removed at a later date, future development couldn't be done? I mean, I don't think so, but is there anything that can be done?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you rightly point out, if my eyes will work in this light, paragraph 6.4 of the report illustrates that the site has been identified previously in the site allocation DPD for up to 120 houses. Development plan documents aren't necessarily precise to the extent that they've done the work that the applicant's done here to see how many units the site will yield. Their ballpark figures. So clearly this is a little south of this, but as we've illustrated this evening, it does work in development in terms of the policies in the development plan. And that is a material consideration, even though that document was not formally adopted. It must be given some weight, as you have done previously when sites that have been in a site allocation DPD have come forward. In terms of the area in green on the plan, that would have to be considered on its own merits at any later stage. As Jonathan's outlined this evening, there are issues with the development of that site at the moment, notably because of the Comar zone issue and the Askews Farm Lane tankers. If they were to be removed, for example, then that could shed a different light on that site, but that would have to be considered further down the line.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I suppose my concern would be if you remove the tankers, we're probably looking at more homes, which is slightly concerning, but obviously a separate issue, I suppose, at this stage. Okay, so with that, we'll open it up to debate. Would anyone like to start debating the item? Thank you. Councillor Lydiard.
Yeah, I mean, I use Devonshire Road sort of at least twice a day, so I know it really well. I know, the amount of traffic and the area extremely well indeed. I see no reason why there shouldn't be these houses there. People have a need for housing. I don't see a problem with the traffic. It does get busy from 7:45 till 9 o'clock. But in recent months, since the A13's been sorted, we don't have the sort of problems that we had in the past. So I'm happy to support the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lydiard, Councillor Rice and Councillor Ostojola.
Well, Chair, our hands are tied. It's in the core strategy. It's an identified site. It's a reasonable application. I suppose my only concern, and it's been answered by the Highways Officer, is under item 19, page 57, is the site splays and speed reduction measures that will have to be put in place before the development can go live. So with that, I will support it, because if we don't support this application and we send it away, we know only too well the Planning Inspectorate would award costs against this authority.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ostojola and then Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. Whenever we consider applications of this sort, to me, it's always best to see what we can do at the design stage to try and mitigate against concerns raised. And so while I appreciate that it's an outline plan and all, to me, as much as we can do to mitigate the effect of concerns raised by residents of Moore Avenue, the more we can do about that within reason, then the best. So in terms of access to the rear gardens, which are the concerns which had been raised there, as long as that is properly looked at by planning officers in conjunction with the residents there, just so that they work together on it. I think more so, and I know we both touched on this, the 30 mile per hour speed limit. I think that's crucial, because coming out of that, cars going up into Devonshire Road off London Road are accelerating uphill, and so cars coming out of this site, there's that potential risk. It's too close to say you put another traffic light there, but it's just that potential risk. So I think we just need to make the signage there clearer, and if there could be anything done to that lovely, using the word lovely very carefully, junction, Devonshire Road stroke London Road, that junction, then if there's anything that could be done either as part of the 106, just to ensure that that's improved a bit. Many times the traffic lights, they like Councillor Lydiard, I use that quite a lot. Many times the traffic lights there go pear-shaped, they go funny. At times it passes two cars and then stops and forever. It's just little things which tend to build up traffic in either direction. I know they're mundane maintenance things, but if with the more traffic that goes on the road, then the more impact that would have. Most people tend to use Devonshire Road as a sort of like almost link road because of the numerous roadworks or repairs or gas repairs or maintenance that seem to be unending on London Road. So I think we just need to ensure that at this build stage we can do as much as possible to mitigate all the effects of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to Councillor Otshola. Any further, anyone else would like to debate? Councillor Little, sorry, thank you.
Yes, I'd like to thank Councillor Lydia for thinking Devonshire Road's got a good junction now. Now the work on the A13's been completed. I mean, I've travelled down there quite a lot, and when it gets blocked up, it does get a bit of a mess. And it's normally because people are running, something else has gone wrong somewhere. But that whole area does need some work doing to it, or looking at in the future, particularly down the bottom there where you're going into the traffic lights and you then go into 2 lanes. But people can't get into the second lane because they're just blocked up with traffic trying to get along, and it's frustrating there. That being said, I think work on 30 mile an hour or doing something that reduces the speed in that area where people are trying to turn out and turn in and turn out, I think is a way forward. And if that's something that is going to be considered in after this application has been approved or not, that would be good. The other thing is congratulations to actually starting to get 36 affordable homes as well, because I mean we've been banging on about it for long enough, and it doesn't happen as often as it needs to. So I'm really pleased with that, and I will be supporting this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Piccolo.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I expressed my concern earlier on regarding the access or the egress, should we say, more than the access out of the site. But looking at the plans again and then talking about the site displays, it does look that there could be something other than a direct left turn if need be along that site there, but that's for looking at a later stage. And I know I mentioned about trying to make it left turn to stop people using London Road. My experience is, though, that you tend to use the quickest route rather than necessarily the shortest route. And if London Road is congested, the natural thing to do would be to turn left and go up the other way, even if it was slightly longer. I know quite often if I'm stuck on traffic, I'm quite happy to travel an extra 2 miles out my way if it means I'm on the go all the time rather than just sitting stationary. So on that, and I can understand some of the residents' feelings regarding the overlooking of Moore Avenue, but having said that, there's been many a planning application come before us where residents would have loved 30 metres, let alone 45 and 50 metres overlooking. And say, whilst I sympathise that it's a view that they've had for a long time, it is rather generous in planning terms to what the developers necessarily needed to have agreed to. So on that, I'm minded to approve the application.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to debate the item? No? Okay. So with that, there is a recommendation on 8.0. I would echo a lot of the comments in the debate item. I would be very interested to see if there's anything we can do to protect that additional parcel of land effectively opposite Askew's Farm. If there are any future plans for Askew's Farm, if the local councillors, if the Chapel councillors keep an eye on it, see if anything can be done and rescued before future development comes in, that I think that would be welcome. Outside that, I would echo that when these sites are handed over to the site-specific allocation, we are a little bit restricted if there's no clear, concise material consideration. And yes, the 35% affordable housing, the education contributions are welcome on this particular site. With that, if there are no further comments, we'll head to the vote. There is a recommendation.
Just on a procedural matter, can you or Andy just clarify, because this is outline panel, all matters resolved except access, what's the next stage in terms of this, please?
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Councillor Otshola. Andy, would you like to come in?
Chair, just so I'm clear as to the question, what would be the next steps if this application is approved? Is that the question? Yes. The reserved matter application would come in for the rest of the details, the layout, the design, the landscaping, etc. that would follow.
So, yeah, that's what I was trying to clarify. So it's still going to come back.
Yes, it
you.
would require a reserve matter application before the development could be built out. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And one other passing comment, maybe to if this does get approved. I mean, I do generally like the idea of the design that we're seeing here. Obviously, that might not be what we end up with, but I think that would be very welcome. Looking at the particular landscape. So with that, recommendation 8.0 on page 50, the recommendation is for approval. Would anyone like to recommend approval? Councillor Lydiard, anyone like to second that? Councillor Little. Okay, so with that, all those in favour of recommendation 8.0 on page 50, please raise your hands. Okay, thank you. And all those against? Okay, thank you. So with that, we can say item agenda 9, 16/01625/OUT, land adjacent to Moore Avenue, Devonshire Road, London Road, has been approved. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for everybody who turned up. If you'd like to have a couple of minutes to leave, you're more than welcome to. If not, you're more than welcome to stay. Thank you. Okay, with that, agenda item 10, reference 17/00521/FUL, 6 Tennyson Avenue. Jonathan, if you'd like to present a report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the conversion of the existing dwelling into 2 one-bed flats. An existing building to the rear of the garden of the main house that was built as an annex would be converted into a separate dwelling house. Parking would be provided for the 2 flats at the front of the property, a space for each flat at the front of the property, and 2 spaces for the bungalow in the Undercroft parking area. A similar recent application for the conversion of the house into 3 flats was refused at committee and dismissed by the planning inspectorate in January 2017. The application included parking in the rear garden of the dwelling. The appeal was dismissed only because the inspector was concerned about the impact of the rear parking area on neighbour amenity. He did not raise any objection to the conversion of the house into flats or the resultant use of the annex at the rear as a separate dwelling. The proposal now includes parking to the front of the site and in the Undercroft. Accordingly, the sole remaining reason cited by the inspector has been removed. Accordingly, the proposal is now considered to be acceptable and compliant with local plan policy and government guidance. Approval is therefore recommended.
Okay, thank you for that report. Have you got any further questions, Councillor Artichola?
Thank you, Chair. Jonathan, please just point out again exactly where the car parking spaces will be and the access to those car parking spaces.
That's the existing application site with 2 parking spaces shown to the right-hand side and Undercroft parking. The proposed application would include 2 parking spaces for the flats to the left of the site and then parking Undercroft for the bungalow at the rear, which would be served by a footpath to gain access to the bungalow. So the 2 spaces for the flats would effectively be there, and the parking for the bungalow would be in the Undercroft and to the front.
Sorry, Chair. Maybe it's just me. I just don't get it properly.
Okay. So, on the plans, there's a space there, and a second space there, and then there's 2 spaces in the Undercroft. If we go back to the house, so 1 space would effectively be there, second space would be there. That's an Undercroft, so it goes straight through, and the 2 spaces would be under there for the bungalow at the back of the property.
All right, sorry. To me, that if you go back to the picture, please. Yeah, to me that from where I'm sitting looks like a garage in itself, unless it's just the way the picture's taken.
Yeah, it does have a door on it, but if you on this picture it shows you can at the back. At the moment there is a gap, so you could potentially drive all the way through. It doesn't have a back wall, but 2 spaces could be accommodated in that area. There's no physical development under there. It's just effectively an open space with the door at the front.
So they're going to break the back wall, are you saying, and go through?
No, sorry. There is a gap in the back wall, but the spaces would be provided there. There is a condition on the decision, or a condition on the report which says no car parking can take place behind that point, but 2 car parking spaces can be accommodated under there, so that it's effectively a void with a door at the front and a door at the back, but 2 spaces could be accommodated under there.
Thanks for that. Sorry, Chair, about that. So if an emergency vehicle, let's say a fire engine, needed to access the bungalow at the back, how would they do that?
There would potentially be access from the entrance to Pig's Corner. The plans do show a gate, so there would be access. People could access across there.
Sorry, I know the gate you're showing just after that, to the right of that, is that another property there?
That's part of the Pig's Corner complex. So that building there is the other property that's shown on the plan. So they're proposing a gate.
And the wall there.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton.
So if interpretation is correct, then those 2 spaces in the tunnel, if you like, what in the garage there, the tunnel, that would preclude any other vehicles getting there because obviously if they're used as parking spaces, then that would be it. Yeah, and you would have to use the gate for cycles or anything else like that for entrance and egress.
Potentially that would be an easier access to the rear, but you could walk past a car to get to the back. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions there? Okay. There are no speakers on this item, so with that we'll go to debate. The application itself has come to us before. Last time, slightly different. We rejected it last time. They've listened to what the planning inspector have said on appeal, which to me suggests if it was to go to appeal again, it's likely, in my opinion, that would be approved. I don't think I like the idea of carving up a house and turning it into 2 flats and amenity at the back. I don't like it personally, but if it passes planning regulation and it's within guidelines, I suppose again we're a little bit limited on this particular application. I generally don't like parking cars underneath what effectively would be bedrooms either. But again, if it passes regulations, we're limited. So with that, is there anyone else like to debate? Councillor Lydiards?
Yeah, I basically agree with the Chair. It looks a little bit like sort of back garden development to me. I'm not happy with it at all, but if it meets all of our planning rules and regulations, I can't see that we can turn it down, really.
Councillor Ottershola?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you can see from the questions I was asking about my concerns about it, but I think that's it. It's back to the whole procedural thing and rules and all that stuff again. So if I don't like it, but if it's within the rules of planning, then so be it. I'm just not really happy that you've got that lovely teeny-weeny door, or even if they might widen that a bit, where that'll be the access point, really. I mean, in reality, almost like what we're saying about the other application, what's stopping people after this has passed not to use that tunnel, or for want of a better word, to park? They just park out on the road and use that side bit as the main entrance and exit. That's more, in my view, more realistic, which would then be the main point of going into the property. But again, if they've taken advice from the planning inspectorate, and the planning inspectorate is almost like forcing our hands, so to speak, it's not much we can do about that. Just not liking it. I don't know what that was. What's that big space that? Yeah.
that's the amenity area at the back. So there's an amenity area for the bungalow itself, which will be fenced, and then that's an open garden amenity space that can be used by the 2 flats.
Thank you. Thank you.
First, Councillor Piccolo, then Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't see. I could understand before with the parking in the back gardens how that could be construed as inappropriate or not suitable. But I mean, there's many houses that come before us now, especially on new estates, where the garage actually is an integral part of the building. So parking cars underneath bedrooms is not something new, and it's something that's agreed on a regular basis on some of the new builds now. As far as infill at the back garden, I can understand, and I'm not one that likes the idea of building new premises or building new properties inside a back garden development. A lot of it's happened in my ward and the adjacent wards, but at the end of the day, that is an existing annex, so it's not as though we're increasing or putting anything else in there that what isn't already there. So bearing all that in mind, I can't see any problem with following the officer's recommendation and approving it.
Okay, thank you. First, Councillor Hamilton, then Councillor Rice.
Thank you. The first floor plan for flat 2, that is the lounge and the bathroom above the. Am I interpreting it correctly? That is above where those 2 cars are shown.
Yeah, you're looking at bedroom 5, bathroom, toilet, and bedroom
So it's
1.
a lounge and a bath rather than bedrooms. So above where those 2 cars would be.
Yeah, bedrooms. No, they are bedrooms. Yeah, I've got that right, haven't I? Jonathan?
The existing plan has the bedrooms above the garage, but the proposed plan with the 2 spaces on the left-hand side has a lounge and a bathroom towards the front. So, yeah, not bedrooms on the proposed plan, no.
Because I'm going to understand being bedrooms above the cars. A lounge, possibly in a bathroom, maybe not much difference. Maybe a point of order is, would there be any problems were, for example, a taxi to go down there to pick up someone from there and return through there? As a point of view, so if were a taxi to go down there and park there to collect someone, return, there'll be no problem. Because I know you said you couldn't park any further forward.
Why would you do that? No, I'm just. They could potentially, a car could go under there and wait and then back out, but they wouldn't be able to go past the back of the house. So it'd be an unlikely manoeuvre for a taxi to want to do, in all honesty, I think, but it could happen.
Or an emergency vehicle.
But that would be the same in any situation of an undercroft, yeah. But you get some sites in Sheffield where you have to drive through to the parking and you could get vehicles going under and then turning around and coming back out, so yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Rice.
Yes, Chair. I mean, we are in a cleft stick. Government tell us that we've got to build homes. This is a bungalow, 2 flats. I think we're duty bound to support it this evening because people need homes. If we don't support these in the brownfield, we'll have to go into our greenfield sites.
Okay, thank you. Right, so I don't believe there's any further comments. So with that, there is a recommendation on page 66, recommendation 8.0. Would anyone like to recommend? Councillor Piccolo, would anyone like to second? I'll second that one. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Okay, thank you. You got that, yeah? Yeah. And that's unanimous. So we can say agenda item 10, 17/00521/FUL has been approved. Thank you. And with that, we can move on to agenda item 11, 17/00548/REM, land to the east of Euclid Way and south West Thurrock Way. Matthew, would you like to present a report?
Sorry, Chair, just playing musical chairs with colleagues. There's an item of housekeeping first off. We've received a late letter which isn't reported on the agenda. That is from a management company who manage the commercial estate to the south of the site. That's the Junction 31 estate. I think it's named. They have referred to a condition on the outline part of the previous consent, which was to do with surface water drainage, and raise a concern. Just to point out, that matter isn't for consideration before you tonight, so you can cast aside, if you like, that particular that letter. Okay, I'll go through the presentation. So the site before you, members may recall this from a couple of years ago when we presented a report which was proposing a mixed-use development, partly commercial and partly residential. So the site, just to orientate you, is within the Lakeside Basin. West Thurrock Way is the road running east-west through there. The big box there, which I'm highlighting, is Costco. You've got the Gather Bingo, which is now vacant in a position there, and what we have here is a basically a vacant site within the basin, which shows up quite nicely on that aerial picture. So casting your minds back a couple of years, you may recall that layout. So what was approved in the recent past was a hybrid application. So on the left-hand side here, which I'm trying to highlight, there's basically a full permission for commercial development. So that part there was a food store with A1, A3, A5 uses along the front there. An outline planning permission was granted for this site here, wrapping round to the south and to the east for residential. That's one of the parameters drawing, so that's basically to highlight the residential element of the proposals. And you'll see there were two zones within the residential element. The darker colour there was referred to as Zone 1. The lighter colour was referred to as Zone 2. Before you tonight are the reserve matters for that lighter colour. So we're talking about the first phase of the residential development, and the items before you are the reserve matters, that they being the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. The outline consents for those two elements combined, the total permission was for up to 320 dwellings. Before you, again, the lighter colour, you can see there on the bottom. So this particular application is for 214 dwellings. It's a mix of between 1 and 4 bedroom properties, a mix of houses and flats, with storey heights between 2 and 4 stories. So, on to what's before you tonight. Apologies for some of the detail there. So again, we're only talking about the centre part of the development there. The big rectangle which is there is the food store. That's put there for a reference, so a full permission exists for that particular building. Obviously, that development hasn't commenced. So we're talking about the detail here of the layout of these particular buildings. There's a coloured drawing which hopefully makes it a little bit more clear. In terms of detail, there are 5 proposed flat blocks in a position there, and the rest of it is a mixture of mainly terraced housing. Variety of house types. These are a terraced house type. Semi-detached and detached house type. There are elevations of 2 main block types. So these are flat block type. That's a 3-storey with a pitch roof. and 4-storey with a flat roof element. A couple of visuals. That's mainly the housing of the dwelling house element, and that's a view towards the 4-storey excuse me, flat element. I'll run through some pictures of the site. As you pointed out, you can point out on that aerial picture, the site is vacant, so that's from the south-western corner looking north-east across the site. The building on the left-hand side on the skyline is the bingo building, which is vacant, is actually outside of this particular site. You are looking at the foreground and middle distance there, the overgrown vacant area. Similar view looking north. That's the southern boundary of the site. So to the left-hand side is the Junction 31 estate, which is the commercial area outside of the site. And that's another view of the commercial area. Fairly low key buildings to the south. That's along the northern boundary of the site, looking in a westerly direction. So the car dealerships which front onto London Road, West Thurrock Way, are on the right-hand side there. They don't form part of this particular phase of the residential development. They will be in a later phase, so the site is on the left-hand side there. Similar view from the northern boundary, so that you can make out the site very clearly. And again, the northern boundary, you can make out some of the weighting restrictions on the road there. The site is on the left-hand side there behind the fence. And finally, there's a pond, a drainage pond, quite overgrown from that picture, but it's in the foreground there. That's taken from the eastern boundary of the site, looking in a westerly direction. And finally, one more, just looking generally across the south, towards the south of the site. That's the Junction 31 estate in the background. Items for consideration before you tonight are, in essence, related to the compliance of these proposals with the approved parameters and to the acceptability of the reserved matters in their own right, i.e. the appearance of the buildings, how they look, landscaping, layout and the scale of developments. Now, in terms of the appearance, I've shown you some elevations. The buildings would be of a modern design. We're satisfied that there would be good quality materials, and so the appearance of the development is supported. In terms of landscaping, there were some parameters agreed at outline stage. This development would comply with those parameters, so the landscaping elements are supported. Just to emphasise that point, I'll zip back to the layout plan because I did skip past it. So there are two main soft landscape elements within the development. There's a central park area there, and on the eastern edge, that's that pond area which would be tidied up, desilted, and enhanced with new planting and seating areas. I'll leave that one up, bear with me. With reference to layout, it's considered that the street layout is logical. There are reasonable rear garden areas, and relationships between buildings are considered to be acceptable. The report refers to car parking, and it's considered that minimum standards are met. This is a town centre location. Lakeside Basin is defined as a town centre within the core strategy. Given that context, the amount of car parking proposed is considered to be acceptable. And finally, with regard to scale, i.e. building height and massing, the development proposed would comply with the parameters which were established by the outline permission. Subject to a number of conditions which are set out in the report, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that we'll open up to questions. Would anyone like to start? Councillor Little.
I think we've already been through this before, but how many affordable homes are there?
For this particular development, there are no affordable homes. The outline application was supported by a viability assessment. There are considerable remediation costs involved in making the site fit for residential development. So, although there is a 106 agreement that principally delivers highways improvements and public realm improvements, but there is no affordable housing. That was agreed at the outline stage when it came to before members in 2014.
Councillor Osterschalder.
Thanks, Chair. Not a lot of questions for me today. just very quick about the access to, if you can just clarify, please, again, the access to, is it West Thurrock Way or the point of entry into the site, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Access was agreed for the residential element of the proposal. Top centre of the screen there, that's an existing roundabout, which is close to where the KFC is, if you can picture that roundabout. There would be some minor remodelling of that particular junction, but you'll make out a main point of access running south, which would serve the development. And within development, there's a series of normal estate roads you would expect to see. One thing I would point out, a requirement of the Section 106 agreement was to ensure that the road infrastructure within the site could accommodate a bus link. So if you can make out on the screen there, that particular road alignment down there, through there, down to the bottom left-hand side would be able to accommodate a bus link, and funding for a service is also provided through the 106 agreement.
Thank you. In terms of that same road, if the supermarket that is being proposed at the time, if they do build out, would that be the same access road?
Yeah. So you can probably just about make out from the same roundabout. There would be a new point of access. It isn't actually shown on this particular drawing, but there'd be a new access point roughly in about there, a new arm coming in to serve a surface car park. Just anecdotally, a lot of the Section 106 obligations for the consent were basically being generated by the food store. If you can imagine at peak time, a food store would be generating an awful lot of traffic. So at the time when the application considered, it was the potential impact of the food store which was driving the detail of the 106 obligations.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No? Okay, so with that, we do have one speaker on this item this evening. That's the agent, Catherine Williams. If you'd like to come down, and you'll have 3 minutes in which to present your case. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee this evening. My name is Catherine Williams. I'm the agent for the applicant Bellway Homes. Firstly, I would like to thank officers for their report and recommendation, which we fully support. Bellway are the country's fourth largest house builder. The Essex division build over 800 homes per annum across the region and have a proven track record for delivering high quality residential schemes. They are fully committed to the delivery of this site, and the necessary funding and construction team is in place to start work as soon as possible should you grant Reserve Matters approval this evening. As you'll be aware, hybrid planning permission was granted by the Council in May 2015. This established the principle of residential development on the site and the access details. This application relates to the first phase of the development to come forward and will deliver a contemporary, high quality residential scheme together with an area of open space and improvements to the existing pond on site, which will create an attractive entrance feature. The proposals fully accord with the prevailing planning policy framework and will assist in meeting the Council's identified local housing need and contribute towards your 5-year land supply. The design and layout of the proposed scheme follows extensive discussions with your officers over the last 6 months, which has informed the design approach, material palette and appearance of the proposed properties. We have also sought to ensure that the scheme accords with the principles and parameters established by the outline permission. The scheme includes a broad mix of homes ranging from 1 and 2 bedroom flats and 2 to 4 bedroom houses, which will assist in providing a sustainable and balanced community. The proposed landscaping strategy incorporates extensive grassed areas, garden beds and street trees to create an attractive residential environment. The accessibility of the site will be improved as a result of the development through the incorporation of a bus route, which will enable the highways team to develop the Lakeside Hopper service, which has been an aspiration since the grant of planning permission. With regard to your car parking standards, the number of car parking spaces exceeds the standards as set out in your officer's report. Except for the visitor spaces, the car parking spaces will be allocated to the dwellings and sold with the freehold, ensuring that each dwelling has permanent car parking spaces available. Moreover, Bellway proposed to introduce a management regime for the car parking, controlled by the site management company, which will ensure that there is no unregulated parking and the visitor spaces are not used by occupiers of the residential units. This will be controlled by Condition 3 of the permission. Bellway are confident that the amount of car parking proposed and the proposed management scheme are appropriate for this site, and that the proposed residential units are marketable and saleable with parking at this level. Aside from the delivery of new homes, the application incorporates a central area of landscape public open space, which will create a visually attractive setting for the proposed new housing and provide an important amenity space for future residents. Bellway will maintain the open space at no cost to the council via an appointed management company. The application will provide a wide range of planning and regeneration benefits, including multi-million-pound direct investment in transforming this brownfield site into a high-quality development. This, in turn, will bring wider economic benefits and local employment opportunities. In addition, the delivery of the first phase will act as a catalyst for the development of further phases on the site and assist in the delivery of the Council's vision for Lakeside. In summary, your officers have concluded that the proposals are acceptable in planning terms, and I therefore respectfully request that the application be approved in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Ostochola, would you like to ask any further questions?
Thank you, Chair. I had two questions before, and something that came out of what the Speaker just said, and so I'll start with that. In terms of the visitor space, I just wasn't very clear. Something about the visitor space are not used by occupiers of the residential unit. Is that something we would try to condition? I appreciate the adequate, almost generous in terms parking spaces, but I don't know why that's necessary, if at all. It's in the speech read by the applicant. So page 10, the third paragraph.
So your query is with second sentence.
Second, third sentence, yes, in the third paragraph. Moreover, Bellway proposed to introduce a management regime for parking controlled by blah, 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 to ensure that visitor spaces are not used by occupiers of the residential units.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of planning conditions, we've used condition 3 as a fairly standard type condition, which requires long-term management of the allocated spaces. I mean, spaces will either be allocated to a plot or they'll be allocated to visitors.
Yeah.
So you can assume that will cover the entirety of the car parking within the development. I think the offer from Bellway to introduce a management regime probably mirrors what the condition would do in any case.
Maybe I'm not making myself clear. What I'm trying to say, I wondered why it's necessary in this case. I thought if it was to stop people using the Lakeside shopping complex, I could understand that, but I just didn't know why it's necessary. But that's what I said. I think Andy wanted to come in.
Sorry, Chair, I don't want to cut across Matt, but I think you've found the solution. I suggest that statement's probably there because it's within a wider commercial area. If the food store is built out next door, you've got lakeside opposite, and basically it's to stop unregulated parking not associated with the residential development itself, and therefore it sets itself aside from, for example, the previous scheme you submitted, which hasn't got those potential pressures adjacent to it.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. That's what I was hoping it was going to be. Just two quick things then. Where's the most? These are 214 units, which would generate quite a few candidates, so to speak, for schools. So, what's the catchment schools at again, Harris Academy? I think the school I was trying to refer to earlier was the West Thurrock. I think it's now called West Thurrock Academy. What's the schools there, and what the impact would this have on those schools?
Yeah, Chair. Obviously this is an application for approval of reserve matters. The substantive issue about impact of infrastructure would have been dealt with at outline stage. Now, I haven't got the 106 in front of me, but from recollection, there is a standard tariff. You remember the planning obligation strategy, which the council formerly used to run, which was a standard flat fee. I may be corrected if I can dig out the 106, but that fee did apply, so there would be a contribution. I couldn't tell you at the present moment in time what the position is regarding pressure on school places, but at outline stage that would have been considered, and the section 106 secures our financial contribution to social infrastructure, generally speaking.
Okay, thanks. I think it was at the time, if I remember, was it 3.5 if they were under some sort of pressure, or 5,000 across the board, or something like that per unit. I can't remember the full details, but what's that effect? I just wanted to make sure that had been considered, the pressure on school places, and very similarly pressure on GPs in the area, because again, like you said, Lakesid's been a town centre, so to speak, and this will be the first main residential dwell in that area. So again, what GP surgery would they be using, and whether that's been taken on board, and if it's been answered before, forgive me.
Yeah, Chair, you've probably got me a slight disadvantage here in terms of not having an agreement to hand, but again, just to emphasise, this is an application for approval of reserve matters. The outline planning permission, which was presented to you a couple of years ago now, would have had a full response, or would have referred to the full responses from education, from the council's highways housing team, and from NHS England as well. And again, the 106 reflects a contribution to infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Hamilton, then Councillor Piccolo.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned as a possibility that there would be a bus route coming down from the plan I'm looking at, down north and then veering southwest. Is anything more details on that, in the sense that have you approached a bus company to say, yes, there's a possibility that they would be interested? Also, you mentioned one route, just a very small deviation. Would it be possible to consider also the eastern road, looking at the roundabout here? And also, is there any proposal for a lay-by so the bus can pull in and not stop the traffic?
Thank you, Chair. With regards to bus operators, there has been discussions with local bus operators with regards to the hopper bus service as part of the Lakeside expansion proposals. This bus route through here is one of the pieces of the jigsaw in the Lakeside Basin. Members may recall that there was an application a number of years ago for a link that between Lakeside and Tesco units to provide a northern bus link around the north of the lake. This is the next link in that chain. This would make the bus link go from West Thurrock Way through the site down onto Euclid Way, which takes you down to West Thurrock Way, which is subject to bus services at the moment. So it's conceivable that with this development we can get a circular route around the basin to try and get more people onto buses rather than driving through the Lakeside Basin. With regards to a bus lay-by, the road has been secured from the outline to be of a particular width to enable buses to accommodate on that road safely. The bus operators tend to not prefer lay-bys because if they pull into a lay-by and there's heavy traffic, it's difficult for them to pull out because people generally don't give way. It is a residential road. It's not going to be heavily trafficked in any event anyway. So it's not going to have a detrimental impact on the road user if a bus stops to pick up passengers. There will be a bus lane at the bottom of the site as well to prevent any access from vehicles, in which there will be bus stops incorporated within that as well. So in terms of bus stops, there's one, I believe, just to the south of the roundabout. There's also bus stops to the north of the roundabout before you get onto West Thurrock Way as well. The road to the north of the roundabout is a dual carriageway by its current form. There's no intention to reduce that in any lanes because to do so would be very expensive and it's not necessarily needed. And with the shopping areas to the west, it's probably appropriate to keep it as a dual carriageway. So it's okay for buses to stop on there and people to use the right-hand lane to overtake. But on balance, it's really what we asked for at the outline. They've really stepped up to the plate, and it's exactly what we're after.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Piccolo.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions. Regarding the affordable housing, I know I've only been on the planning committee sort of 18 months, but I know in some of the previous ones that have just come up regarding affordable housing, there's usually after a time period, there's a viability study again to see whether or not land prices have increased and affordable housing would now be appropriate. Has that been looked at, even if it's not the full 35%? Would there be any leeway there? Regarding the bus link, is there any danger or is there any way to protect it from becoming a rat run for when Lakeside does get busy? Because it obviously would be a nice route through to try to avoid some of the traffic. And finally, you mentioned about the 106, that the supermarket was the 106 agreement, that the supermarket was the driver for the 106 agreements. Are the 106 agreements on a pro rata basis on what's being developed out, or once the development starts, is that when all the 106 becomes due?
Yeah, Chair, with regard to the affordable housing, again, you'll have to excuse me, I haven't got the agreement to hand. At the time, it was demonstrated to officers' satisfaction and ultimately to the committee's satisfaction that because of the remediation costs on site, and there is quite a lot of contamination in the ground, unfortunately, that the provision of affordable housing wasn't at that time viable. I'll be honest with you, I can't recall whether or not there was a review clause. If there is one, we would have written it in, but I'm afraid I haven't got the detailed agreement to hand. But again, I'm afraid I'm going to labour the point. This is before you as an application for the approval of reserved matters, rather than revisiting the heads of terms for Section 106 legal agreement. In terms of the potential for rat running, which I think is your second point, there is a bus gate or potential for bus control measures, CCTV, that sort of thing, at the southwestern corner, so the bottom left-hand side of that particular plan. Obviously, it wouldn't be desirable to have cars or other private vehicles cutting through, so that has been taken into account. Your final point was about Section 106. Can you remind me of the detail of that point again? Sorry.
Yeah, just that you said that the driver for the bulk of the 106 was the supermarket development, and my question was, is the 106 money released pro rata on the amount of the development that takes place, or does it all become payable once part of the development takes place?
Yeah, thank you. Again, bear with me because I'm going from memory to a large degree here. The way the 106 was constructed was that some payments were triggered on commencement of the commercial development, and some payments were triggered on commencement of the residential development. It was, in terms of traffic impact, which is principally what the 106 is trying to mitigate and address. It was the food store, the TA from recollection, again looking across my colleague, it was the food store which was generating most of the traffic. But the way the 106, that labouring the point, was constructed, it was whichever elements came forward, they would need to be mitigated in turn, if you like.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Okay. So with that, we'll now open up the item to debate. Would anyone like to start debating the item? First off, Councillor Rice.
Yes, Chair. I mean, this is to be welcomed. Lakeside now is a town. We're going to see residential development within our new town. It's near a railway station, which is good. We're going to get a hopper service, another food store. I suppose the only thing that's missing will be the charging posts for the new electric cars, which we will have to consider at a later date in other applications. But it is to be welcomed because it does provide much needed residential homes for local people.
Thank you. Councillor Ostojola.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually quite impressed about the application. I was really impressed about the car parking spaces. That's why I was not looking to see any restriction for the residents there, rather than externals coming into it. But I was really quite impressed about the provision of car parking spaces, at least one for flats, and at times more. So to me that was quite good, and I appreciate the number of visitor spaces that have been provided, which should hopefully adequately deal with the visitors coming in there. So overall, the planning principles, to me, absolutely spot on. It's something I know it's been earmarked for quite a while. I think I was on the committee then, and I just gone back to dig out what education said, and they did say that an education contribution would be required at nursery and primary level. So for schools, I think it was West, they've just put 2 schools there. But I'm sure you can dig out the details later. West Thurrock School was one of them. And West Thurrock Primary and Ormiston Park Academy are the 2 schools mentioned by the education team in their letter to you or to the planning people. So it must go to your main desk. But as long as those are done, I haven't dug out the one which deals with access to GP surgeries, but I think because where this one is, it's in a lovely, unique position because it's bang in the middle of commercial units, and I just think having that access to all these things is quite crucial. I didn't go details into all your other provisions, which I know you've covered. So the provision of cycling facilities and things like that, because of the proximity, is again well covered, and hopefully Matthew F. would cover that in a bit more details. But other than that, I'm happy to support the scheme. I think it's a long time coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Snell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd pretty much like to echo what Councillor Rice said. I think this is a much needed development. It's in a prime location, which I think will be very quickly a desirable location. People will want to move there. All the facilities are there. It's to be welcomed greatly. My only slight disappointment with it, I suppose, is looking at the images of the 3-bedroom houses, which to me look nothing so much like 1970s rabbit hutches. I think we could probably have hoped for a slightly better design than those. The other places look absolutely fine, but I think the 3-bedroom houses particularly leave a little bit to be desired. But on the whole, I think it's a good development that should be welcomed.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? No? Okay. All right then. So with that, we will move to the recommendation, which is 8.0, and that's set out on page 88. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I needed someone to recommend that, didn't I? Sorry. Councillor Jola and seconder Councillor Rice. Sorry, guys. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so that's unanimous across the committee. So we can say that reference 17/00548/REM has been approved. Thank you. Okay. Excellent. So before we move on to agenda item 12, it's now 5 to 9. I'd like to recommend we suspend standing orders until we can complete the remaining items. Is that agreed? And that'll be until the close of play. Thank you. Agreed. Excellent. Okay. Councillor Rice.
Chair, on this next application, I need to declare an interest that I'm actually on the board of Gloriana.
Okay.
We're on that committee, yes.
Yeah, that's acceptable, yeah. Oh, hang on. We'll just to clarify a point there, Councillor Rice.
Yeah, could we just seek Vivian's advice in relation to that, Chair?
Yeah, we'll find out, Vivian. Does anyone want a quick break? We've been here nearly 2 hours, a couple of minutes, and then we'll reconvene at, well, let's say 9 o'clock, if you could just be very brief.
Disposable pecuniary interest, but as he's on the board and is the company's responsibility, obviously to do the best for the company. Yeah, it's best to declare an interest and not participate. So if you could just I think it probably needs to be in public and for the record. So if when we start, if you could revert to Vivian and she'll say that. Is that okay? Vivian thinks you're best not to. You've not got a DPI, disposable pecuniary interest. You're on the board, it's duty bound to do the best for that company. And
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're just going to clarify an item on the shareholder comment. It will be another few more minutes. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I believe we're ready to start the next item. Obviously, there was a comment there about the council and shareholding and Gloriana. Vivian, would you like to come in and clarify?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. The original comment was that the councillor was on the board. understand that the situation is that the council itself obviously is the owner of Gloriana as such, and the particular councillor is a member of General Purposes Committee, and as the member of that committee attends the board meetings of Gloriana on that basis. If I would ask if that is correct, then it's not a personal interest of the member as such. It's an interest of the council, and therefore the particular councillor is not precluded from participating in this item. Had the councillor been actually a board member of Gloriana, that would have been so significant that he could not participate in this item. But being a member of General Purposes Committee who attends meetings, if that is the correct information I've been given, then that is entirely different. I do think it probably does require clarification. I can see that is going to be forthcoming. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, Councillor Rice, and then Councillor Snell. I think you want to come in as well.
We've been actually told we're shareholders, so I would have thought we have some conflict. But, you know, I'll take advice from our legal officer.
My understanding is that the way that Gloriana has been set up, the councillors that sit in with the meetings that they have, we sit there as shareholders of Gloriana. Therefore, that might well preclude us from this particular section.
Chair, through you, please. I would, on the basis that there is a difference between what I am being told by an officer with regards to the member status and the member's own view of their status, and the fact that I personally don't have the factual information to hand to say which is correct. As you know, even without the members who are on General Purposes Committee, this committee would still be quorate this evening, and therefore I would say for this occasion only, members who are of committee or members of the General Purposes Committee, if they do not participate in this item would still be quorate and a decision could be made, and after this evening, when the facts are actually known, it can be clarified and set for future occasions. I apologise, I don't know how Gloriana is set up in sufficient detail.
Okay, thanks, Vivian. If you just give me a few moments. Okay, thank you. So, thanks for those comments there, Vivian. So, I think generally you're probably okay, in my own personal opinion, but I think to play it safe, my opinion would be actually Councillor Rice and Snell, just so we don't run into any further complications. You don't participate. That's my opinion. If you two gentlemen are happy with that, then we can crack on. But I do appreciate that, and I do apologise. And if we could get some clarification on that in the next few days, that'd be great. Thank you.
Chair, while they are going out, just to clarify, I think some of the confusion was general purposes. I think you're talking about General Services Committee rather than General Purposes Committee, which the Council doesn't have at the moment.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll move on to the item 12. That's a 16/00923/FUL, land to north of Rosebery Road, Castle Road and Belmont Road, Grays. Matthew, if you'd be so kind as to present the reports.
Thank you, Chair. If I go through the presentation first, that's the site in question, roughly rectangular shaped site. The three residential roads to the south, Rosebery, Castle and Belmont, you can make out aligned north-south, adjacent to the southern boundary of the site. Parker Road is off to the east. The primary school, Belmont Castle Academy, is off to the north there, and to the west are commercial uses within Askew's Farm Lane. London Road, you can just about make out along the south, running east-west on the southern boundary of that particular frame there. That's an aerial which shows the state of the site. That's from 2014. The site is open, the site's overgrown, but you can clearly make out the adjoining residential, school and commercial uses. The application before you seeks full planning permission for residential development, and that is 80 dwellings, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom houses with bungalows. The applicant is Gloriana Thurrock Limited, as we're well aware by now. The proposals include 35% affordable housing and with story heights ranging between 1 and 3 stories. So the layout basically continues the existing terraces of the roads to the south in a northerly direction and terminates with this broken terrace running east-west. The bungalows are arranged in that central part of the site there around an area of open space, with further areas of open space to the western part of the site there and to the eastern part of the site just there. Quickly running through the elevations there, the bungalow, quite a distinctive sort of sawtooth edge roof with chimney type features on that front elevation. That's a 2-bedroom house, again that asymmetrical sawtooth as we've referred to in a committee report, ridge roof type. 3-bedroom house with a similar design. That's a 4-bedroom house up to 3 stories with a more traditional sort of ridge roof. A number of street scenes, beg your pardon. So that's that distinctive roof type along the top there. Terrace of the 3-storey properties, the bungalows along the bottom there. There's some visuals presented by the architect. Again, you'll make out that distinctive roof pattern on the right-hand side there with a projecting box element at first floor level. And a couple more 3-storey dwellings there on the top. You can make out the bungalows on the bottom one there on the right-hand side. And again, a view that would be looking northwards into the site from the residential roads to the east and west of the site. That would be the central road where the bungalows would be. That would be on either side. And a number of pictures of the site. As I say, the site is open. Fairly overgrown, so that's from the southwestern corner looking east. So to orientate you, Parker Road is on the skyline there in the far distance. The school site is off to the left-hand side behind those trees. Again, general shot looking towards the school site again, which is on the skyline. Looking south along Rosebery Road there, and you can make out the character of the dwellings, the existing dwellings adjoining the site there. The western boundary of the site, so those are the commercial uses on the skyline there. Again, looking east across the site towards Parker Road on the skyline there, and looking north towards the school boundary. That's from the other direction, looking across the site to the west. So again, on the skyline there would be the commercial uses within Askew's Farm Lane. The southern boundary of the site, so the existing residential streets off there to the left, and you can make out in the middle part of the site there the informal car parking which takes place in the turning heads at the top of the 3 residential streets. That's Belmont Road looking south. Again, you can make out the character of the existing residential streets and on-street car parking. And that's Belmont Road. The purpose of that particular picture was to point out the informal parking which occurs in the turning heads at the end of each of the 3 residential roads. And finally Castle Road, which is the middle road looking south down towards London Road. In terms of items for assessment, the land use, residential land use would be supported. The development plan allocates this particular site as a housing land proposal. The application proposes a mix of residential units and a mix of bungalows as well, which are specifically aimed for elderly occupiers. The density is also within the range which is set out within the development plan. In terms of layout and design, the layout is considered to be logical and efficient. There are satisfactory rear garden areas, and relationships both within the site and with existing adjoining residential properties are considered to be appropriate. As I pointed out, there is public open space provision proposed for the site, and the scale of the dwellings between 1 and 3 stories is supported and wouldn't be out of character locally. You would have made out that quite a modern design is proposed with the use of good quality materials, and so the design generally of the proposals is supported. In terms of highways, there would be a one-way arrangement for the proposed internal layout of the roadway, and that arrangement would maintain existing rear accesses for existing residents. One of the particular photos I showed was residents who use the site to access the rear of their properties. That would be maintained by the proposals. With reference to car parking, the proposals meet suggested standards and would include a number of unallocated parking spaces which would be available for general use, and so they would be replacing some of the spaces which would be lost in those turning heads. There are no noise or air quality objections to the proposals, and subject to mitigation there would be no objections in terms of impact on ecology. Finally, there are no flood risk objections to the proposals. All in all, rounding all those things together, the application is recommended for approval. There would be Section 106 obligations to secure the affordable housing, to secure a financial contribution towards education provision, and to secure off-site ecological mitigation, subject to 106 and the conditions which are set out in the report. The application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Matthew, for that report. We'll now open it up to questions. First of all, Councillor Stola.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matthew, for your report, for all the details. And it's not the design I've got initial issue with. The initial issue I've got is with access to the site. All 3 roads are fairly familiar with that. I don't have to declare an interest because my children don't go to that school anymore, but they used to go to that school, to Belmont Castle Academy, so I'm very familiar with in fact, all three of those roads. And as far as I'm aware, those 3 roads are very, very congested at best of times. Parking on both sides of the road, into and out at peak times. Well, like with most schools anyway, at peak times it's really quite tedious. How has the plans for the road for access to the site improved this, so that residents who currently live in those areas and residents who would be living at this site have not as much traffic in the area? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application is accompanied by a transport assessment, and there has been pre-submission dialogue with officers, including the Council's highways officers. Now, in terms of, I don't know what you can make out on the screen there, the access proposals are that within the site there would be a one-way arrangement. So from the western side there, vehicles would have to enter from, that's Rosebery Road there, and travel through the site and exit via Belmont. Now, I mentioned in the presentation, I refer to photographs of access, existing rear access for properties to the south. So what the proposals also include is this road along the southern boundary, which would maintain existing access arrangements for residents in those 3 residential roads. So, in terms of the detail of how residents of the new development would access the site, well, they'd access from the west, access their properties, and when they're coming out, they would egress to the east. For occupants of the 3 residential roads at the south, they would be able to use that southern link road to form that connection. Alternatively, if they are coming up Rosebery on the western side, they could use the development, if you like, to get that turn and to come out onto London Road via Belmont. So the design and the layout does think about how proposed residents and also how existing residents would access and egress eventually onto London Road to the south. And in particular, that southern, it's a much lower category road. We wouldn't want it as a main road, clearly, because it's close to people's back gardens. But that lower category access strip there in particular would offer a choice, potentially, for residents accessing and egressing where they live.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that. Can you please zoom out your map a bit just to say exactly where the school is in proximity to this? Because when you say Belmont Road, I just tried to say. So where's the school, please?
The school is there, and it's access off Parker Road. So access to the school is from there, from Parker Road.
Thanks. I'll have to have a think. I thought access to the school was from Belmont. No.
It's from Parker Road. I mean, just again anecdotally, I don't think you can make out, and that perhaps shows it a little bit better. Parker Road is off there on the right hand side there. They're the school buildings. It's apparent that pedestrians, and you can possibly make out in this sort of part of the site there, informally use the site to cut across, but that's clearly pedestrians only. Vehicular access to the school is from Parker Road and not through the 3 residential roads to the south of the site.
Okay, Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Coming back to Parker Road, is that a footbridge that I can see?
You're referring to that area
there? That's it.
No, that's an access. That's an open area which provides potential vehicle access for residents to the rear of their properties. I don't know if I've got that in a photograph. Bear with me a second. I mean, that's on the southern boundary, so that's not Parker Road. But going back to the aerial, it's not a footbridge. It's an open area, hard surfaced, which residents in Parker Road could potentially use to access the rear of their properties.
And a little below that is just a footbridge, I understand, because it's actually got a post on my map. So I'm assuming that's just a footbridge. It's not a bridge. I think there might be footbridge or footpath. Sorry, footpath. There's footpath. My apologies. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't have the microphone. I have walked, all boundaries of that site in point of fact, and it's quite permeable, let's say. So along that southern boundary, you've got people, you've got access to the rear of the dwellings in the 3 roads. And then on the eastern boundary there, you've got, in theory, a car could drive up there. It's a little bit overgrown to say the least. But those southern and eastern boundaries, if you like, they are to a large degree open.
So to summarise briefly then, you would drive up one-way Rectory Road. That's going to be made a one-way system. So you would drive north from London Road there. Is that correct?
Rosebery Road, which is on the left-hand side.
Rosebery,
there,
I do apologise.
So that's obviously new residents within the development, that's how they would access. For existing residents, in terms of egressing Rosebery Road, well, they would have the choice. If they can turn, they can leave via Rosebery Road. But if it's parked up on both sides, they have the opportunity to drive through the site to egress via Belmont Road onto London Road.
Right. Because I can imagine the situation if it gets busy, they're going to go up Rosemary Road, Rosemary Road, travel round and come out again, and it's going to be a little bit like it's going to be follow my leader, because it's going to get easier to go up that way. And I know you mentioned about the fact that there's going to be a sort of secondary road to the south of the plan, which I think will very soon develop into a major road, because instead of going around the estate, people will say, right, we're going to go up Rosebery Road, turn right and come down again. And I think that's going to get more and more frequent.
Okay, so yeah, thanks for picking up on those comments. So just to clarify, the idea was that people go up Rosemary Road and come out at the other end. You mentioned that the current residents would be able to, the three middle roads would be able to interchange, but then there's nothing stopping any of the new residents chucking a right at the top of Rosemary Road. There's nothing there stopping them doing it either, is there? So, for example, let's just say I live on the estate, I come up Rosemary Road, I can actually turn right.
Just for clarity, at what point
at the
are
top
you referring to?
So
that
at the
point
top,
there?
yeah, that point there, you mentioned that residents would go up of the new estate.
Yeah, for clarity, and it doesn't show particularly well on that particular plan.
Sorry, just move your hand there. Sorry, Matt.
So at that point there, according to the plan, that section of the secondary road would be one way only. So, for argument's sake, if you were a resident of Rosebery Road, if you were driving north along Rosebery Road and you wanted to access back onto London Road, you would have to go through the site and egress via Belmont. Because that section there is one way only, if you're a resident of the middle road, Castle Road, you could turn left there and go back down Rosebery, or you could get to that point and turn right and go out via Belmont. So you've got a choice. If you're travelling north on Belmont, you can't access the site, because at the point where you enter the site it's one way, you'd be conflicting with traffic. However, you could access both Castle and Rosebery by turning left and going down that secondary access road. So it's slightly complicated to try and explain on the screen, but it does offer a range of movements for both existing residents, and it offers proposed residents a clear way in and a clear way out of the site.
If I may continue then, so you're saying the one-way system for that some secondary subsidiary road at the bottom would be from right to left?
That's correct. Apart from that far right-hand side there, which is two-way, it acts as a number of car parking spaces. So that element would be two-way. The rest of it would be east to west or right to left as you're looking.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ostojola.
Sorry, Chair. As you can see, we've just there's two of us have gone through this, and we all. I'll propose a site visit, Chair. We did, that road in itself is just the existing road, and all the roads that lead up to it. I think it would be advantageous if members actually saw that for themselves and before making a decision.
Okay. Councillor Little, if you just want to come in there. Let me just check with Andy. Okay, sorry, Brian, before you come in there, Councillor Ottajola has proposed a site visit. Is that seconded? Okay, Councillor Lydiard. All right then, so we'll head to the vote there. All those in favour of a site visit? Okay. And all those against? Okay, that's 3-3. Andy? I mean, yeah. Okay, that's been dropped. Councillor Ottajola. Councillor Little?
On a completely different note, the previous Gloriana project that came before us a couple of times, insulation, it was going to be at the best standard possible for the... Is this something that's been included in the proposals of what standard of insulation is going to be? And additional to that, the other previous one was going to have the best solar panels ever in the world sitting on top of them as well. And the reason I'm mentioning it, because very soon after that, all those things that were planned come off the build, and then we went to the affordable housing after that. And so I'm just asking whether there's conditions there that are making sure that if they have put together a plan to deliver really good insulation and super duper roof panels, solar panels, that these conditions are met.
Yeah, Chair. There are two development plan policies which refer to those particular items. There is a development plan policy which refers to Code for Sustainable Homes. That policy is no longer bites because the government suspended Code for Sustainable Homes. However, there are building regulations and requirements which would bite on any development, and energy efficiency would be one of the factors to be taken into account there. Condition 7 of the recommendation, page 117, refers to the energy statement which was submitted in support of the application, which proposes rooftop PV panels. A number of the elevations, if I just pick them up there again, the right-hand drawing there, you can make out for that particular house type there would be solar PV panels which convert obviously daylight into electricity, so that is covered by a condition. The point about insulation can't form a planning condition anymore, but it is covered by building regulations. I think the final point you made there was about affordable housing. I think I know the site you're talking about because we sat in this committee room not too long ago and discussed that one. I think that particular issue with affordable housing and how much affordable housing this scheme could sustain was related very, very largely to ground conditions and remediation on the site. Those factors don't come into play on this site.
So we've got conditions that can't be taken away.
Well, the condition is there for renewable energy, and within the recommendation, provision and retention of affordable housing and the split of affordable housing forms ahead of term. Now, obviously, I can't tell what may or may not come forward in the future, but what's before you is policy compliant affordable housing and conditions covering renewable energy.
Councillor Piccolo.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and be brief, bearing in mind the time. Matthew, could you just tell me, on your site visits down there, you talk this. I take it there's 3 turning heads at present. Can you tell me what sort of capacity they've got for the amount of cars that could park in them turning heads at the present? I noticed on one of the pictures it looked like there was about 8 cars in one of the turning heads. Would that be typical?
You'll have to rely on my anecdotal evidence. I haven't got the transport assessment in front of me, but no doubt that would have included some sort of assessment. They're the three turning heads along the bottom there. I mean, on that aerial picture, you can make out some car parking. I think the photo you're referring to, and these were taken last summer. It's probably,
I think there was that one.
Probably that one. So I think that's Castle Road, which is the middle turning head. I bow to local knowledge. That's Belmont Road, which is the eastern one. I can count about 8 there.
Yes,
that was taken late afternoon. It wasn't taken during the evening.
No, I was
Theoretically, in the evening there might be more vehicles parked there. So
I just want, because I noticed in the application that there's a further 39 spaces proposed on the main one-way road and the secondary road adjacent to the site, southern boundary, to allow for visitors parking and the use of the residents of the existing road. So I was just trying to work out whether those extra 39 or those 39 spaces would adequately accommodate the people that park in the turning heads at present. If it's roughly 10 cars or whatever per turning head, that would seem to cope with it. That really was my only concern. What I am concerned about, where's the parking? Bearing in mind the bungalows are going to be designed, or I think I've read somewhere that's for over 55 or whatever, and it said parking close by. Can you let me know where the parking close by is, bearing in mind they might at some stage have wheelchair access or whatever if it's for older people?
Thank you. Yeah, if you want to answer that one, and then Matt, did you want to come in on the parking issues? Thank you.
yeah, Chair. So the bungalows are arranged in 2 terraces through there, and the car parking. I'll preface that by saying there is the usual, as you would expect, car park management allocation type condition, but you've got, hang on a second, I've lost my mouse, there we go, 5 spaces along there, which include spaces for disabled users, and again, that bank there would include space for disabled users. I mean, Matt will comment perhaps in a little bit more detail in car park, and all I would say within the report is that we have specifically addressed that point, paragraphs 6.25 onwards. All I would say, without treading on my colleagues' toes, is that numerically, based on the number of houses proposed, this comfortably meets the standard and even exceeds the standard, and the applicant has gone out of their way to provide replacement spaces for spaces which in theory could be lost within those turning heads. We've put within the report that if this was a volume house builder putting in an application, perhaps they wouldn't have gone to that trouble.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Picot mentioned about the capacity of the turning heads for parking. That's a bit of a difficult issue for the Highways Authority. Technically, you shouldn't park within a turning head. It's there for vehicles to turn. Waste and Recycling team regularly make comment on parked cars in this area, parked in the turning head, making it difficult for them to turn. However, the applicant has held exhibition with residents, and that was one of the key issues that the residents picked up on. As Matt has said, there is an over-provision on the site in terms of the parking standards. If you look at the plan, although it's technically not detailed as such, the majority of the houses each have 2 spaces per unit located on plot. Some have 3 spaces because the generous frontages of the properties. Therefore, the service roads between each of the main roads has a lot of what we would call visitor parking spaces. which is in accordance with the TA, which done an assessment on the amount of cars that were parking in those turning heads, and they've strived to replicate that capacity that residents have currently enjoyed on that new service road arrangement. And this arrangement also allows the refuse vehicles to be able to get up and down those roads in a better way than what is currently being done. So on that basis, it's, in terms of design and layout, it's an improvement on the existing.
Okay, thank you. I've got a few questions about the parking as well. So I think it is quite clear sometimes you do find these grey areas in Thurrock where people can utilise turning circles as car parking spaces. If you look at the satellite image, all three at the end of Rosemary Road, Castle Road and Belmont Road are quite well used. It's quite understandable given how narrow the roads are. I'm a little bit concerned at Rosemary Road. I think they're getting hit quite hard here when you look at the one-way system, because all the traffic's going to be going up. It looks like they're going to lose the turning circle, and whilst the extra generous parking is lucrative, it's not for the residents of Rosemary Road because they can't turn right. But it has to be one way because it's too narrow. And then of course you've got the top of Rosemary Road where the turning circle is. There's not really nothing. It's sort of it's just a wide road. So it is quite concerning. What we'll do, I think we'll invite the speakers down and see what they've got to say. So with that, we'll invite first off residents. That's Mrs. Cara Muskia. Cara Muskia, if you'd like to come down and present your case, you'll be speaking in objection, and you have 3 minutes which to do so.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. We live in Rosebery Road, which you've been discussing, and we object to the above proposed development on the grounds that there are too many proposed properties for the area involved. Many proposed properties will have more than one vehicle, although we've heard about the parking. Although the developer has planned for this, the vehicles will need to use existing roads to gain access to the London Road. The local roads have a lot of on-street parking, which you've said, and Rosebery Road, Castle Road and Belmont Road have turning heads, which you've discussed, at the top where cars park as well. I prepared this before. Will this proposed new road accommodate all the vehicles presently parking in these turning heads? London Road is already heavily used and will be even more used when the former gasometer site development almost opposite Aldi pound stretcher is completed. Customers using these stores enter and exit it onto the London Road too. And when the former gasometer site is completed, their traffic will enter and exit onto the London Road also, very near to where customers enter and exit the Aldi pound stretcher car park. This proposed new development will add to the London Road traffic very near us, which is bad enough and obviously could get a lot worse. And where are the heavy plant vehicles going to access the building site? Will we, the residents, have to put up with the noise, disruption and dirt whilst proposed building takes place? And not to mention environmental issues as well, which is, of course, although it's derelict, we have enjoyed an open space which will now be built up, of course. Of course, we realise that land is precious and people need homes, but it's the amount, and not to be to the detriment of the original residents. And that's all I've got to say about it.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. And we have one other speaker on this particular item. That's the agent, Judith Tranter, and she'll be speaking in support. If you'd like to come down, and you've got 3 minutes in which to present your case.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Judith Tranter. I'm a director of TM Architects, and I'm acting as the agent for the application. The scheme before you this evening will create 80 much-needed new homes on an underused site with a housing allocation in close proximity to Grays Town Centre. The development comprises houses and bungalows in a mix of 2, 3 and 4 bedrooms, including 28 affordable homes, which is 35%. The layout and scale of the proposals are sympathetic to their context and at a density at the lower end of that referred to in council planning policy. In fact, policy would support over twice as many homes on this site, but the applicant wanted to provide houses, not flats, and thereby minimise impact on neighbouring properties. The design of the houses was supported by an independent design review panel from Design Council CABE and will create a distinctive sense of place. We understand that parking and traffic impacts are some of the main issues for neighbours, and the applicant has worked hard to minimise the impact on their amenity. We held 3 public consultations in the lead up to planning and revised the scheme as a direct result of feedback. A new roadway was added into the layout to facilitate convenient connection between the northern ends of the existing roads. An additional car parking provision has been made over and above that required by policy to replace any that may currently be using the turning heads. We also consulted local residents on a possible one-way system for the existing roads in an effort to reduce congestion, but the result was to leave the roads two-way as they are now. And the application included traffic impact assessment, which concluded that the junctions of the 3 streets with London Road will have ample traffic capacity even after the development of the adjacent gasworks site. Each of the 2-bed houses will have 1 parking space on their driveways, and all other houses will have 2. The bungalows are designed for the elderly and have 1 parking space each close by, providing a total of 144 spaces in all. In addition, the scheme proposes 20 spaces on street for visitors, as per the standards, and an additional 19 for overspill parking for the existing residents. Total number of parking spaces provided will be 183, which exceeds the numbers suggested by the latest draft parking standards, and this is fully supported by officers. In addition to parking provision, the scheme provides 2 secure covered bicycle parking spaces for every house to encourage cycling, and a high-quality public realm which will encourage new and existing residents to walk to Belmont Castle Primary School, Parker Road Park and other local amenities, reducing traffic build-up on surrounding streets. These new landscaped areas will improve visual amenity for everyone and provide children's play space. The central space at the top of Castle Road will include a rain garden as part of a SUD strategy, and all 3 areas will be planted with trees and plants to encourage biodiversity. A construction environmental management plan will be submitted and approved prior to any works commencing and will include vehicle access arrangements and measures for control of dust, dirt, noise and vibration to minimise adverse impacts on surrounding neighbours. Hours of working will also be controlled. In conclusion, the scheme will be developed on underused land to produce 80 high-quality homes, including 28 affordable ones, all in accordance with council policy, and we therefore respectfully request that you support the application and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so with that, have we got any further questions? Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you, Chair. So you're saying that Rosemary, Castle and Beaumont Road are all going to be 2-way. So I would anticipate it could be a bit of a problem at the top of Belmont Road when the 1-way system enters the 2-way. Has there been provision for that?
Thank you, Chair. I recall before the speakers you made some comments with regards to the access arrangements. Did you want me to run through the whole of the access strategy as you can see on the plan.
Yes, thank you.
Matt, could you put the plan up? Yeah. So if I can take it from Rosebery Road for the start, that's the main access in for the new development, to the where the red dot is at the moment, that is two-way. For going further north and to the west, there is an access into an area that's shaded in blue. That is an access to the allotment site. That will remain as two-way. And then you see there's a dark grey shaded area to the north. That's effectively where the one-way system will start. So it's anticipated that that access into the allotments could be formed as part of a turning head for the residents of Rosebery Road, so they can go in and out via Rosebery Road as their current provision is.
But just to clarify, there's no parking space there.
There's no parking spaces there. The access forms into the allotment site, so theoretically the access is used. If anyone parks there, they cause obstruction. Obviously, there may be instances of an evening where people can park there, but that could be dealt with by parking restrictions. The service road that goes between Castle and Rosebery Road is one way from east to west. That will be accompanied with no entry signs to direct people that they can't travel down that road. That's a moving traffic order that's enforced by the police. Castle Road is two-way, quite rightly. Again, the service roads will be one way, but you notice the space there is designed to what we call size 5, so it's suitable for a private car to turn round in. Heavy goods vehicles, like refuse vehicles, wouldn't be able to turn around in it, but conceivably they can use the service roads to get access to Rosebery Road and the development site. Belmont Road, again, the access to the south is two-way. The access to the east is also two-way. The one-way system to the north will stop relatively there. Again, no entry signs placed on there, and the access to the west will be one-way as well. So again, that area there, in periods of low traffic movement, could be operated as a turning head because it is a side road access. Alternative, people could use the service road to get down to Castle Road or onto Rosebery Road. So in terms of the accessibility for existing residents, it's not materially different to the current layout. The accesses work better because we've removed as much as we can the on-street parking from the current turning head arrangement so that it's more usable for residents. And the existing residents, because of the one-way system, they would come in via Rosebery Road and theoretically out by Belmont Road. So in terms of the impact on either of those roads, it's better than, say, for example, extending up each road individually and putting a turn ahead at the top, because it's a much better arrangement to route round.
Okay, thank you. And do you have any idea on road movements on Rosebery Road, additional road movements once this site's up and running?
I don't have the details to hand because it's all contained within the transport assessment. Anecdotally, 80 dwellings on average, 2.4 vehicle movements per day. That's an industry recognised average. 10% within the morning peak hour to demonstrate robustness against the peak hour traffic. So if it's 80 units, you're talking, let's say, hypothetically, 160 plus 80. So it's around about 240 vehicle movements per day. 10% of that in the peak hour, 24 vehicle movements. That is assessed against the impact at the junctions. There's a certain amount of traffic coming in, traffic coming out, but when you're looking at the junctions individually, vehicle traffic coming in via Rosebery Road, vehicle traffic coming out by Belmont, the queue lengths aren't significant to raise a concern in terms of the development.
So just to clarify, under Thurrock Council standards, they don't consider an additional 240 movements up Rosebery Road a big enough, effectively, material consideration to say, you know what, that's unacceptable.
Well, that would be over a day period, so that's over a 24-hour period. In terms of assessing impact on network, you look at the worst case scenario, which is the morning peak hour, so that would have been assessed as part of that, and generally it's about 10% of the average daily vehicle movements.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Little?
The speaker that was in objection mentioned traffic movement in terms of for building, when the buildings are going to be starting to be done, lorries and things like that. And I noticed there's a plan that will be provided in the future, but we're going for full planning at the moment. Is there some way we can have some surety that we're not going to end up with a massive problem with lorries trying to go up and down these roads?
Yeah, Chair, I mean, there is a standard, condition 6 is a standard type condition. The subheadings within that don't cover, oh, beg your pardon, they do. So point E would require details of access for construction vehicles. So how HGVs, associated commercial vehicles, would access the site during the construction phase would be a detail which would need to be submitted and agreed in consultation with highways officers.
Right, can I just very quickly then, is there a way of us making sure that we are comfortable with a plan that's put forward and it's not imposed upon us, or it doesn't happen as it's supposed to? Do we have some condition? I know there's conditions, but is there some way of making sure that whatever, managing the situation once it's actually happening?
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that I would be looking at with a construction environment management plan would be the routing of HGVs. I would not personally be comfortable signing off a route that hasn't been fully assessed. So in terms of, if, hypothetically, if the applicant suggested using one of the roads to access the site, they would need to make sure that, one, the road is suitable to take that traffic. There's not an impact on existing residential amenity and parking. That there would be a road condition survey to make sure that any damage to the network is thoroughly mitigated against during and after the build programme. I have had discussions as part of the planning phase about potential construction access, potentially not using the 3 main roads into the site. However, those haven't advanced enough, but I think you can be assured that we wouldn't expect construction traffic to be on the residential roads themselves, because the roads themselves aren't particularly wide, and when you factor in the parked cars and where you'd have to displace those cars to enable the vehicles to access, it would prove quite difficult for the applicant to accommodate it all.
So we're looking at a separate access point that doesn't involve the roads that the residents are discussing?
That would be my preference, yes.
Okay, but then I wouldn't have thought there is any other access other than onto the right of the site. But what we're saying, there might be. I mean, let's just say, but if it was up to you, where would you like to see the access? Just hypothetically, if it wasn't those 3 roads.
Hypothetically, I would expect it to come from the west.
Sorry, Andy, did you want to come in here?
Yeah, Matt Gallagher set out that there was a general condition. If that's Matt's preference, can I just ask through you, Chair, whether or not that can't be specified? If that is members' concern, could we specify that access should be from the west? Is there any impediment to that?
Apologies. Before you answer that, I mean, could you clarify west, Matt? So, Are you looking at the industrial units to the left?
Yeah, so yeah, on the left-hand side there, there is a slither. The application boundary is roughly about there. So, yeah, I mean there would need to be a separate discussion with the landowner, clearly. And I think it sounds like if that's members' wishes, we'd probably need to revise condition number 6 to include not just details of access for construction, but details of routing as well, which would pick up on that particular point.
Okay, all right then. Any further questions, Councillor Lydiard?
Yeah. Just a point, really. I mean, just reflecting on what other people have said. In my ward is the previous Gloriana site, and we've had all sorts of complaints about contractors, probably 8 to 15 vans and a day trying to park as near to the site as they can, and then sort of 30, 40 ton lorries coming to deliver and take stuff away. So it would be an absolute nightmare for people in those 3 roads. And if we can possibly get access from, is it Farm Lane? Then Askew's Farm Lane, then that would be.
Okay, well look, it is a tough one, because it is going to be an issue getting the materials onto that site for those 3 roads. Before we go any further, have you got any further questions? Councillor Chola?
Chair, just ever so quickly, the picture shown now is quite a good one, actually. Around what time was this picture taken? Was it during peak period or off-peak period? Do we have an idea?
Chair, I can't confirm that one. That's an aerial flown by a plane. But I mean,
Okay.
If you're referring to parking in the turning heads, if that's your point.
My point is really the weight of traffic on the that one. My point is the weight of traffic on the 3 roads at the moment, and Matthew did a rough calculation about the impact of new traffic movement, and just trying to say whether the current roads are at or over capacity to start with, and therefore the impact of the new traffic movements, what would that actually mean for the, not just for the new bits, but for the current roads?
Sorry, just to confirm, are you concerned about the capacity of London Road, or are you concerned about the capacity of the 3 roads?
The capacity of the 3 roads, the 3 roads, we can say the 3 feeder roads, or at least maybe the 2 feeder roads in reality. So we're talking about Rosebery and Belmont, the one in and out of the proposal. So what's the weight of those of traffic on those roads currently? Are they at or over capacity? And therefore, what the impact of the odd 240 vehicular movements, which you mentioned earlier, would have on those roads?
Okay, so under road network hierarchy, I don't really bore you on the detail of different types of roads and the bits and pieces, but in terms of conflict points, it's mainly at junctions that you look at the capacity. For example, if each of those roads were extended and additional houses were placed on those roads, and you divided up the existing site, like the proposal of 80 dwellings across those 3 roads, technically the road category would not preclude an amount of houses on those roads, with a turning head at the end. By making it more of a loop road, it frees up more reserved capacity in the road to allow that. So in terms of the 80 dwellings on the capacity of that road, it's not considered to be an issue. The main issue is the junctions onto London Road, because London Road is a very busy road, and it's more about anyone turning out of those junctions or trying to turn into those junctions. That would be the main consideration in this case. and on balance, it's deemed to be acceptable.
Okay, Councillor Lydia, did you want to come in here?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things that need to be looked in a bit further, and I'd like to defer this to get a bit more information, Chair.
Okay, I'll second that. Look, first of all, I would apologise to residents and the applicant. Obviously, I know you've been here a long time, but there is quite clearly an underlying issue here, and I think for me the main point is access to site. And I think if we was to defer it for until a later date, preferably less than a month or a month's time, I want to see if we can gain access to the site via this private road, and see if we can get a bit more clarity on that, because it is. I'll be honest with you, I do think it is an impressive application. The access to site is what it is, but I do think that the heavy goods vehicles moving up and down those roads is a concern. So with that, we'll look to go for a deferral, and we will have to vote on that. That's been seconded. So all those in favour of deferral for a later date? Okay, so that is unanimous. Andy, do you want to come in here and just clarify where we are with that?
Just for clarity, so we're going away with the right brief, Chair. This is to look at that issue of construction traffic and the ability or otherwise to gain access from the west. That's the reason. I should also add for the record, Chair, although I guess it's a pretty obvious point, that will also allow members who wanted to potentially see the site in terms of the previous vote to go in informally at least familiarise themselves a bit further with it if they should so choose. But the predominant reason is for that western construction access or otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, so we are where we are with that. Thank you very much. I do thanks to the residents and the applicant for coming here this evening, and we'll defer that to a later date. For those who'd like to leave, please leave now. Councillor Lydia also has to leave, so and if Councillor Snell and Councillor Rice are still outside, so you're more than welcome to come back. Okay, thank you. Tunde's gone. Okay, we'll reconvene in a couple of moments, just waiting for Councillor Ottajola to return. Excellent. Okay, we will now move on to our last two items on the agenda. Is everyone present? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Rice, did you want to come in there?
Yeah. On these two next applications, Chair, so we all understand where we are, they're only for conditions, aren't they? So we don't have to revisit the original applications. If you could just perhaps explain that to us.
In effect, yeah, you're correct. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll now move on to item 12. That's a 16/00923/FUL, and that's no, it's not. I'm still looking at the last agenda. Sorry, right, here we go. Page 123, agenda item 13, 17/00588/CONDC. That's land adjacent to the A13, A1306 and north of 191235 Purfleet Road. John, would you like to present your report, please? Thank you. Jonathan?
Not John, but I'll present,
Jonathan,
I'll present
sorry.
anyway.
Matthew.
Yeah, Chair, there are two related applications for the same site. There is a reason why we're taking them in this order, which hopefully I'll try to explain. So, quickly on the presentation, that's the site before you. The A13, which is in a cutting, is the eastern boundary. Purfleet Road off to the south there with residential properties, and the Purfleet Industrial Estate off there to the west, with London Road, the A1306, forming the western boundary. That's an area of the site. The site's undeveloped, and open land. Now, in terms of history, there is an outline consent dating from 2014 for employment generating uses. That's principally warehousing units with ancillary offices. That outline permission fixed access and reserved all other matters. And condition 6 of that particular permission refer to a number of parameters, and they were set out in a parameters plan. So that's the approved parameters plan. Just to point out in terms of access, what was approved was a left-in only access from the 1306, which is in a position just there, and then a partial realignment of Purfleet Road through there to create a new all-movement junction for the development. That would then come out onto London Road at that point there with a new signal control junction. Those works are currently going ahead through a Section 278 agreement with the Highways Authority. But going back to this particular application, as I said, condition 6 of the outline consent refers to this plan. That dark area there shows the position where buildings could be sited, and then you've got the lighter grey area, which was shown as an area potentially for servicing, for car parking, etc. And the green area, it was the area where landscaping could occur, soft landscaping. The condition required that the development should be carried out in accordance with those parameters unless otherwise agreed in writing with the local planning authority. So the application you had before you is the applicant basically seeking to amend that drawing. Sorry, going back one step, that's an illustrative layout how the outline development could have been built out under the approved parameter. What's now being proposed are revised parameters. That probably doesn't show you an awful lot, but that's a drawing. Bear with me, that's flipped through 90 degrees. The principal change before you is to change the extent of the building, so that there's quite a lot going on in this drawing, so bear with me. The dark area there is the approved parameter for where buildings could occur. What's being proposed on this part of the site here is that the footprint of the building would project beyond the parameter, and as a knock-on consequence, a car parking area goes very slightly in that part of the site there beyond the approved parameter and into an area which is shown for landscaping. So in a nutshell, what's being proposed is an amendment to the condition, an amendment to the parameters plan to move the development slightly to the south, which would be closer to residential properties which are in Purfleet Road off there to the south. Now, within the report of paragraph 6.7, we've gone through in detail the effect of those changes. as I said, the main changes on that southern part there, the building would be closer to residential properties, as would a car parking area. So the consideration before you really are the visual impacts and the impacts on daylight and sunlight to those nearest residential properties. It's considered that there wouldn't be any unacceptable loss of daylight. There would be mitigation by way of a planted bund, which would be along that southern boundary of the site. Shouldn't have pressed that one, there we go. Which would mitigate the impact of moving the building closer. In terms of noise, the application is accompanied by an update to the environmental statement, which was submitted first time around. That goes through noise issues and concludes that as car parking would be closest to those nearest residential properties in a position there, that would actually be a better situation than potentially the outline parameter, which could have been HGV servicing, movements and parking in that location. So there's a small improvement in terms of noise. In terms of air quality, there would be no objection from the EHO, the Environmental Health Officer. So the revised parameters are submitted as, if you like, an amendment to the condition. There are no planning objections to that. And another way of trying to consider this is if that parameter would have been presented to you at that outline stage 3 years ago, would you have approved it? Well, certainly the recommendation from officers would have been the same, that the development is acceptable. There are no impacts in terms of amenity, in terms of air quality, in terms of noise. So the recommendation is that condition 6 is amended, or the parameter plan pursuant to condition 6 is revised as per what you have in front of you there. Just finishing up, sorry, I've gone too far. So that's the summary. That's the parameter. The next application, if you were to agree this recommendation, follows on, because that is referring to the reserved matters, if you were to agree this as an amended parameter on the outline. If you've got any queries about how that works, please ask, because it's slightly unusual how this one is presented to you.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. So with that, have we got any questions? No? Councillor Little.
The road and the access hasn't changed at all. So the only thing that's changed is that building's shoved itself north-west or north-east a bit or whatever. Oh God, here we go.
Yeah, so going back to that's the approved plan. Access was fixed, so there'd be a new left-in only access point just there. And, as I said, a partial realignment of Purfleet Road, its western end, and an access point in there with a new signal control junction there. Those works are currently underway. As I said, the highways agreement has been completed. I think they're scheduled for completion late summer, autumn time, as I understand it. Access doesn't change. It is principally, the change is moving what's described as Unit 2 closer to the southern boundary of the site and closer to those residential properties. There are a number of pictures. Bear with me, it's been a long evening for everybody. There are a number of pictures. So that's Purfleet Road, residential properties on the left-hand side. The site is off there to the right-hand side, behind that vegetation. That's looking the other direction. So they're the existing highway works which are going in now, hence the traffic control and traffic management. That's the new access which I refer to, which comes out and eventually joins to London Road in a new signal junction. The site there is behind, and that's looking up the 1306 towards the new left-in only access, which is roughly in about there where those traffic cones are. Purfleet Industrial Park is off there to the left-hand side. That's looking the other direction towards Purfleet Road, the open nature of the site, and one more showing the open nature of the site. And finally, that's the new left-in access opposite Purfleet Industrial Park.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Hamilton, did you want to ask a question there?
Just to clarify that the entrance to London Road if you emerge from that, if you like, for the sake of it, it's to the left of the garage, west of the garage that's existing, that's there. You could go across the road and head west to join the A13. Yes.
Left and right turn movements.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we do have one speaker on this item this evening. I'd like to invite down the agent, Mark Stitch. You'll be coming down and speaking in support. You have 3 minutes in which to make your case. Thank you.
Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I will try and keep this brief, and hopefully this will cover both applications before you. My name is Mark Sitch. I'm the senior partner at Barton Wilmore, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant Segro to speak in favour of the discharge of planning conditions, but also the subsequent application. This application follows pre-application meetings with the officers and post-submission discussions to inform the proposals. As said by Matt, outline planning permission was granted in May 2014 for logistics uses. The access points to the site and the quantum of floor space was also approved at that time. We do not propose to change either as part of these submissions. Segro acquired the site in 2015. For condition 6, we have submitted a new parameters plan alongside addendums to the environmental statement originally submitted with the outline planning application. The ES covers matters of air quality, noise, ecology, lighting and landscape to demonstrate that the changes proposed to the parameters of development would not give rise to any adverse impacts. There were no objections from any consultees or neighbours. It has been necessary to amend the layout of the site to make the development more market-facing and to meet more effectively occupier demand. The principal advantage of the proposed change is that we have moved the service yard with the loading bays, dock levellers and activity associated with the service yard to the northern side of Unit 2, i.e. further away from Purfleet Road, which will help to keep noise levels down and HGV movements further away from those properties on Purfleet Road. On the previously approved parameter plan, a service yard was approved adjacent to Purfleet Road, and this is what we've sought to remove. We have provided a section plan which shows Unit 2 is a minimum of 38 metres from the nearest house, 227 Purfleet Road, and will not impact on the amenity of residents or affect daylight. The updated noise assessment shows that the site layout with car parking adjacent to Purfleet Road instead of a service yard activities is beneficial, and there is no requirement for acoustic screening, bunding or attenuation along this boundary. In accordance with the principles established under the outline permission, we are proposing extensive landscaping specifically intended to reduce visual impacts of development for local residents on Purfleet Road. We're proposing a bund and semi-mature planting along the boundary. The bund will be between 4 to 5 metres high for most of its length and planted with a woodland mix and semi-mature trees before the use of the site commences. The combined earthworks and tree planting will provide a minimum screening height of 10 metres from the point of planting. The updated air quality assessment demonstrates that the proposed site layout will benefit residents of Purfleet Road in terms of air quality compared to the approved layout under the outline. In conclusion, the revised parameter plan before you is considered acceptable. The development will not cause harm to the amenities of occupiers of Purfleet Road in respect of daylight, noise and air quality. The submitted ES addendums also demonstrate that the changes to the parameters of development will not give rise to any issues in respect of ecology and external lighting. We therefore respectively request that members follow the recommendation put forward by the case officer for the revised parameters plan to be agreed as a revision to the original parameters plan pursuant to condition 6 on the outline permission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so with that, any further questions? No? Okay, would you like, we'll now open up the item to debates before we go to the vote. Would anyone like to debate the item? No? Okay, alright then. There is a recommendation on page 137. That's recommendation 8.0 to approve the revised plan. Would anyone like to recommend that? I will. Is that seconded? Councillor Chichola? Okay, so with that we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour of recommendation 8.0, please raise your hands. Excellent. That's unanimous across the committee. So with that, agenda item 13, we can say 17/00588/CONDC has been approved. Thank you. And moving on is the additional item, which is also linked to item 13. That's agenda item 14, 17/00587/REM. Matthew, would you like to present a report?
Thank you, Chair. So following on from that revised parameter, this is a revised reserve matters submission covering the issues of appearance, layout, landscaping and scale for a commercial development. You've seen the site, you've seen the aerial. That's the proposed layout. So I'll point out on the cursor. Again, that's the left-in access from London Road I was referring to. The new point of access onto London Road with the signal control junction and how access arrangements would serve the site. 2 units, a larger one there, car parking at the northern end, a service yard. Unit 2 with the service yard on the northern side and car parking on the southern side. And another thing to point out is this landscaped area which the speaker referred to there along the southern boundary, which would provide a sort of visual screen in between the site and Purfleet Road. Also point out these surface water attenuation ponds in a position there adjacent to London Road. In terms of elevations, that's Unit 1, the larger unit, shallow pitch barrel roof or barrel vault roof. And the cladding chosen is this pixelated style of a limited number of colours but broken up to try and break up the mass and bulk of the building. Unit 2, a similar approach, darker colours at the bottom, lighter colours towards the sky, going to try and blend into the skyline. There are a series of section drawings taken from the closest residential receptor, so that existing house there is referred to in report in Purfleet Road. It's about 38 metres between the nearest part of that dwelling and the nearest part of Unit 2. So that top section shows the landscaping and the bund on planting. Second drawings after 5 years, how that could fill out. And finally, the bottom drawing, potentially how that screen could work as a visual buffer after 15 years of planting. The reserve matters are within the approved parameters. In point of fact, there's less floor space than was allowed by the outline. It's considered there's no harm to the nearest residential properties by reason of noise or air quality. There are, as I've said previously, ongoing Section 278 highway works. There is sufficient car parking, cycle parking and HGV parking on site. Design and layout is considered to be acceptable, and for those reasons the application is recommended for approval, subject to the relatively small number of conditions which are set out right at the end of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there any questions based on that report? No? Okay. We do have another request to speak. Mark, if you'd like to pop down briefly. I know you covered most of it, but just constitutionally, we've got your name here. So if you just keep it as brief as you can, and then we'll move on to the debate.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and members, to the opportunity to speak in respect of this item. As explained by the case officer, this relates to reserved matters, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale of development pursuant to the outline. Following the approval of the amendments to Condition 6, this relates to proposed amendments to, submission of reserved matters pursuant to that outline. As already referenced, the total floor space and also dimensions of the proposed buildings are within the approved parameters agreed at the outline stage. It's also worth noting in terms of the elevations, we have had further discussions with officers and revised elevations have been provided and obviously reached agreement in respect of those. Also worth noting in respect of matters of flood risk and traffic, they've been carefully considered by members at the outline stage, found to be acceptable, and there are conditions on the outline in which we are required to submit details to, and those details have been submitted. In conclusion, the scheme represents a high-quality, sustainable development which accords with the Council's Core Strategy 2015 and Design SPD. We therefore respectfully request members follow the recommendation put forward by the case officer to approve the application, subject to the pre-existing conditions on the outline. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, are there any further questions? No? Okay. We'll now open up the item to debate. Would anyone like to debate the item? No? Okay. All right then. So there is a recommendation, 8.0, and that's set out on pages 153, and that's for approval. I'd like to recommend that. Is that seconded? Councillor Little. And all those in favour of recommendation 8.0 on page 153, please raise your hands. Excellent. Okay, that's unanimous across the committee, so we can say that agenda item 14, 17/00-587/REM has been approved, and that's 22:30, and we can now close the meeting. Thank you very much.